Y'all look good.
Susan, I think we're good to go. Are you seeing it in YouTube?
I am now. You may begin.
And before we start, just the other question I have is, are we going to be reading this statement regarding the January 6th attacks? Because I do not see that.
It was in the packet, Mayor.
Okay, but we're not
as an
reading
item.
it. We're just approving it. Because I don't have my packet up. It's the forum. So it was like, we're not reading it. We're just approving it. Correct?
Either way you like. We could grab the item and pull it up if you like, or.
What do you guys want to do? Just approve it or read it? Aren, what do you want to do? Just approve it? We read it last week for the most part.
I would actually ask Councilmember Waters his thoughts on that one. It is his statement.
Dr. Waters, is last week's good enough, or do you want to read it again?
No, I took too much time last week, so.
Okay, we'll just approve it then.
I don't feel the need to read it again.
Okay, we're good to go. I just didn't want to be disrespectful. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. The January 19th, 2021 Longmont City Council Open Forum meeting. Can we please start with a roll call? I am here.
All right, council members, Polly Christensen.
Here.
Susie Hidalgo-Fahring.
Here.
Marcia Martin.
Here.
Joan Peck.
Here.
Aren Rodriguez.
Here.
Tim Waters.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, great. So can we go ahead and let's do the pledge? Dr. Waters, let's have you do it. Lead us, please.
On cue, you ready?
All righty, here we go.
I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hate to say it, that was probably the most in sync we've been. I think Councilmember Waters, if nothing else, he just got a new job. All right, let's go ahead and remind everybody that tonight is our forum meeting. So in a little bit, we're going to be asking people to call in, and we'll give you a break, and that's the number you're going to call in. And it's the same like public invited to be heard, but you get 5 minutes, and then council has the opportunity to respond should they choose to do so. So let's move on to the COVID update. I believe Jeff Zayich is here.
I am, Mayor. Thank you very much. Thanks, council members. And I think someone's got my slides. And I know you have a very busy agenda tonight, and I have overall very good news. So I'm going to go through some of these fairly quickly. And then I'm going to focus at the end a little more on the vaccine, which is probably what's on most people's minds. Next slide. So I know this is small. What I wanted to illustrate here is just that Colorado has really dodged a tsunami that others have not been so successful at. What these 4 graphs show are 3-day incidence rates. For the state up in the left-hand side, Boulder County is the second one on the right, Larimer County down on the left, and then Weld County on the right. And the key takeaway here is if you see it in red, it means we're headed in the wrong direction. And this is 3-day incidence, so it's more responsive. We can tell what's happening a little sooner. And all of us are headed down into the right direction with that green trend. That is good news, and that is what you're going to see in our data as we move forward here. Next slide. Thank you for making that bigger too. This just shows our status on the dial that I've talked to you all about. We are currently in orange, and we have 3 indicators that we track in Boulder County. All 3 of our indicators are below that severe risk red and are in orange or better. And the one that's closest is our 2-week cumulative incidence rate, which is at 334.7. It is lower than the 350, so we're again headed in the right direction. When I presented last week on this data, we were over a little over 350, so again headed in the right direction on all of our indicators. Next slide. This is the metro graph that I often show you all. Boulder County is in the red. On the, next to the bottom there, we have consistently had good 7-day moving average, with exception of the outbreak associated with CU, and then the outbreak that everybody was experiencing at the end of November and early part of December. The tail that you see on the very end there is what we expected to see. I think Denver got a little more than they expected, but we expected to see a little bit of a bump based on mobility data around Christmas and New Year's, and that is what we saw in that little bump, and we are now headed back in the right direction. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's listening in tonight. This is because people are doing the right things. They're taking this seriously, and I know how much of a sacrifice it's been for all of us to have to go through this. So, but we've done the right thing, and in Colorado, it's definitely paying off for us. Next slide, please. This is our 5-day average. We're at 71 cases as a 5-day average. This is back into the range where we can now do contact tracing and case investigations. We hope that this trend will continue down, and expect with the distribution of vaccine that these numbers, and it's going to get warmer in the next couple months, plus vaccine will get out, that this should be on a declining trend, and we hope it stays that way. Next slide, please. This is the Boulder County residents who have tested positive or considered probable. It's the cumulative rate per 100,000 since the beginning of November. So you can see where each of the individual municipalities are and where unincorporated Boulder County is. This trend has been pretty consistent with the exception of the outbreak that occurred when the students came back in August, at which point Boulder was significantly higher than the rest of the municipalities. Next slide. This is our positivity rate. It's below 5%, which is where we want it. That means we are doing enough testing in the community to identify infection. It's been that way around since about the 19th. Or a little bit earlier than that, we've maintained less than 5%, which is ideal. We have a ton of testing capacity in Boulder County, thanks to Longmont for your partnership in the Longmont site. We do have the ability to test more people. That is not a problem. If anybody is interested in where to find testing, if you just search Boulder County Public Health, COVID-19 data, click on testing, you can see the locations of the testing sites, the hours of operation, where testing is free. And you do not have to have symptoms to access testing. You're going to see at the very last slide that I present that roughly 50% of the people that are positive don't even know that they have the disease. And that's why we're encouraging people to continue to take advantage of the free testing that's in Boulder County. Next slide, please. This is our hospitalizations, again, downward trending. That spike that's at the end of it, 14 typically to 16 days after cases, we will see a little bit of a spike. So I think that's probably the beginning of the spike associated with Christmas there and a little bit of New Year's. We do expect that that will go back down again based on where our cases are now. Next slide. This is the state hospitalizations, same trend. Next slide. This is our deaths. Unfortunately, we did see some high deaths. A lot of those came from long-term care facilities. And I really want to emphasize here, because our long-term care facilities they've been phenomenal partners with us. They have done all the right things. The challenges have been that there's 50%, again, of the people that have this disease don't know it. So as staff come into the facility, they're not even necessarily aware that they have the disease. Once it's in the facility, we all know it's very difficult to control the spread, and many of these facilities can't test on a daily basis. So that is where we saw most of the transmission during this, but we are seeing, we are closing out some of our long-term care facility outbreaks. Those will continue to go down as well. And the long-term care facilities were the first group that was targeted to be reached by vaccine as well. And we are almost through all of those at this point. Next slide. This is just an emphasis on that masks can make a significant difference. That purple line that you see there, both on the left graph and on the right graph, is 95% mask use in the state. We're at about 75% right now. And the blue line is the only other one I really wanted to compare to. Yep, thank you. On both of those. And that is getting vaccine out rapidly to our highest risk populations. So you can see that until vaccine reaches a larger portion of our populations, masks can make a significant difference in reducing the spread of this disease. We know, again, from a death perspective, but also from an economic perspective, our businesses being able to operate, people's quality of life, their social and emotional health, when they don't have to isolate, are all things that we all want to work towards. And masking between now and that time that vaccine is out there can continue to make a significant difference. Next slide. I think we're into vaccines. Yep. So we just put this guest opinion out today. I know this has been extremely frustrating. The communication has to our community, and I completely understand it. We have been challenged with trying to make sure that there's been good coordination between the state and what they're learning and the local public health agencies and all the providers in our communities. And we are continuing to work on that. Some of the things that are happening because there is not enough coordination across the entire state yet for us to be able to be effective at communicating. We are building that. And each week we meet with all of our providers here in Boulder County. The state is also meeting with all of the hospitals across the state. And we will continue to get better at making sure we're getting communication out in a way that makes it easier for our public to access this vaccine. I'm going to go through where we are with the vaccine, what some of the challenges are, but we absolutely certainly understand that communication has been one of those challenges. And the last thing we want to do is to make it harder for people to get it. And we know that that's happening right now. Next slide. So on the left-hand side here is really where I want to focus. This is the phased approach that the governor's office and CDPHE has, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, has put out. The first thing I want to say is that we are, as a provider, and we have, I think it's 30 providers in Boulder County that are registered as providers. Any provider in the state has to follow this, or they risk losing their ability to provide the vaccine. So we are mandated to follow whatever comes out from CDPHE and the governor's office. At the bottom of that yellow box where it says people age 70 and older, so from that bullet above is the phase that we are currently in right now. In phase 1A, 78% of the deaths that are occurring in our state are happening between phase 1A and phase 1B. And that's why you can't see the dotted line, but it's where that bottom of that yellow box is. So when you hear people refer to 1B above the dotted line, that dotted line is right there. And we have to focus on that. We are doing pretty well at a statewide level. There is still projection that we will meet this need across the state by the early part of March. It does look like that will happen based on the latest information that we have. And we know that this has been challenging because there was a lot of miscommunication early on. So this is where at first when this vaccine was coming out, we heard teachers are all included in this first phase, and then it changed. And teachers are included in the lower portion of 1B. That was a challenging situation, and the miscommunication was difficult for so many of us to manage across every county. But it has been made really clear that we have to focus on 1A and 1B above that line. Again, we have a plan in place. Our issue is not capacity, as you'll see. It is the ability to get enough vaccine, which I'll cover in a slide moving forward here. So next slide. This just illustrates where we are, which is this projected short period of time when doses are limited. I'm going to illustrate it a little more in the next slide, but what I want to point out here is that we are going to get through this phase. It is going to, if we have other vaccines come on, like the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is a 1 dose, and it's easier to manage, that can make a huge difference in terms of the amount of vaccine that we can get out. That is under emergency use authorization review. So we won't hear about that vaccine for another week or two, but we will likely see more vaccines come online that will help us expand into that larger number of doses available as we start to hit phase 2. What I want folks to know is that we are prepared. So we have the ability to provide 20,000 doses a week in our community right now. So with our providers, and the folks that we have coordinated, we can do 20,000 doses a week. We are only getting about 3,000 to 3,500 doses a week. So we're well below our ability and capacity to provide vaccine. And it is because we are constrained on supply at this point. And the next slide, I believe, has the numbers relative to that. So on the lower right-hand side, you can see that total phase 1B is about 1.3 million people. Total phase 1A is about 187,000 people. On the right-hand side, we've received, this is a little bit dated, this was last week or a week and a half ago. We'd received roughly 282,200 doses. So the state is projecting, they were projecting 60,000 doses per week. Some weeks they were getting 35,000 doses. Some weeks they were getting 60. Some weeks they were getting a little more than 60. And we are not hearing at a statewide level until a few days before what we're actually going to get from the federal government. So it's been really challenging from the federal government to the state to get good information on how many doses of vaccine we can get and then count on. And then that same challenge occurs from the state to the locals. So the way that vaccines were distributed early on has changed. Now they're distributed a little bit differently. The vaccines go to, as just one example, the hospital systems want, or some of the hospital systems want their vaccines distributed to their central office, and then they want to distribute between their hospitals based on the needs that they see. So the vaccine distribution is going to multiple different providers, and the only way for us to coordinate that is for us to sit down together. So we meet with all of our providers on a weekly basis. We talk about who has what vaccine, where we are in phase 1A, where we are in phase 1B, how many are left, how we're going to work together to try to cover those populations. So I just wanted you to have a sense of, again, what I acknowledge has been a huge issue with being able to effectively communicate really clearly to our public, which makes it really hard for them. Next slide. This is just the overall picture that's a little more updated on the total people that have been immunized with 1 dose, the total amount of providers, the people that have had 2 doses, and the cumulative total doses that have been administered. Next slide. And this is all on the state's website if people wanted to track this. So we've done about 17, close to 17, I think this was as of this morning. So close to 17,000 first doses and about another 2,500 second doses for folks at this point. We will assure, because I know there was confusion based on the announcement again from the governor's office yesterday around second doses. I want to touch on that briefly here because I don't want people to think they're not going to get their second dose. They are. They're, because of the amount of supply we received over the holiday and the slower pickup on administration of implementation of vaccines, there was about 40,000 additional vaccines at the statewide level that were not allocated. So they were not already identified to go to a person who needed a second dose. And they wanted to make sure that they were getting those out and that the supply, which is going to bump up to around 125,000 doses per week for at least a couple weeks, would be able to take care of any second doses. So that the objective was to get more doses out, not have them sitting and waiting. And then with the increased supply, which the state is expecting to get, that they would cover any second doses that were necessary, which it just resulted in more vaccines getting out. That essentially really doesn't change any of the phasing that's out there. So it's not, those additional doses that got out are not going to change significantly any of the timing of those phases. It's just a little bit more vaccine is getting out into the community. Next slide, please. This is the total number of vaccines per week that are administered in Boulder County from the beginning. Again, it is not a capacity issue for us. We have the ability, not just Boulder County Public Health, but between all of our providers in the county, we have the ability to do 20,000 per week. Next slide. there's 31 enrolled providers. Sorry, I think I said 30 before. This is in general how the allocation has gone out up to this point. About 50% to hospitals, 20 to federally qualified health centers, 20 to pharmacies, and then 10% to local public health agencies. And again, all providers have to follow the state phasing. And again, because there is not a central registration for vaccine allocation, we have to work with all of our enrolled providers to coordinate across the county. Next slide. We're getting there. Just again, this is sort of reinforcing the same things. We are planning actively for not just lower 1B phases, but lower 1B has a lot of people in it. I don't know the exact numbers. I would need my vaccine coordinator to be here talking to you to be able to give you those numbers, but it has a lot of folks in it. But it is not, we can manage again 20,000 per week. So we have the ability to get fully to phase 1B. We are starting now to plan with the state on large scale points of dispensing. So once we get into the general population in a couple months here, probably a little more than a couple months, because we are expected to finish 1A and 1B by the end of February. 1B will take a while, so we're probably into the summertime before we're into the general population. But we are planning for the large scale points of dispensing. We have identified multiple pop-up sites. We have identified strike teams that can help us support getting to high impact populations that we know are being more impacted by this disease. So all of that planning is starting to occur now. We will have all those plans written and documented. And of course, when they're written and documented, if something changes, we have to go back and make adjustments. So again, part of the challenge is just for folks to know is when 70 plus were added to 1B, that was an additional 30,000 people in Boulder County alone. So we had to go back because there was 30,000 new people. We had to figure out how are we going to get more providers to be able to deal with those additional 30,000 people. So if there's massive changes that occur as we're going through this phasing that comes from the state, we do have to make adjustments and make sure that we are addressing those adjustments effectively. Next slide. You can still sign up to be notified. Just if you sign up and you're not notified, it's only because we either don't have the vaccine available or you're not in the priority population yet. As soon as we have vaccine, we are working through each of those priority populations. We know how many people are in those priority populations. We know how many people we've reached. We know how many people are left. So if you haven't received a notification, it's because you haven't hit that point in the queue to be able to be contacted to get a vaccine yet. Next, I think the next slide is the last slide. Yep. This was cases are increasing, but I didn't update this. I apologize. Cases are actually decreasing now. We do know what our New Year's impact looks like. Our mobility data, even though it showed an increased movement during the holidays, again, that very first slide that I showed, or second slide that I showed that had that headline, Colorado has done really well comparative to many states in the nation. And it's because people took this seriously, they acted. I really, again, want to emphasize the importance of that, especially as we move forward until the vaccine is out in the community, a more widely distributed process. There's still an estimated 102 people infectious. This was as of last week. My guess is this would be a little bit higher. So it'll probably be around 1 in, I don't know, 115 or 120 people this week is my guess. But as our numbers decrease, you'll see those numbers increase. And just as a benchmark, 3-4 months ago, when we were in the lull, that was around 1 in 800 or 900 people. So a lot less infectiousness in the community months ago compared to where we are now. We're heading in the right direction. So don't want people to let down their guard, but the numbers should get better. And then again, 50% of the people don't have symptoms that have the disease and can spread it. So you've heard me talk a lot about all those strategies that are on there. The one thing you can all do if you haven't done it already is go to addyourphone.com. It's an app that's on your phone. It will tell you if you've been in close proximity to somebody who's a known positive, and it will give you instructions on what to do from that point. So that's it. I know that's a lot of information. Apologize for probably going over on time there, but wanted to make sure I got all that vaccine info out.
Oh, can't see. Harold, was that you?
I'm up here at the top.
No, I know, but did you move your hand?
Nope.
Okay, never mind. All right. Anybody else? Jeff, thank you very much. Anything else other than?
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to show you all the wastewater Dale's going to go over that, and it's 3 slides. Share my screen. Do you see it? Dale?
Yes.
You
Can
see
you hear
it?
me? Mayor and City Council. So just real quick, this will take a couple minutes. We got a couple slides here just to keep you updated on the data that we are receiving through the wastewater surveillance program. And so you can see here on this slide that as we are progressing into January, we are coming down from a bit of a spike. I think similar to what Jeff was talking about following Christmas and New Year's. This past week, we have continued that downward trend. And you can also see on this slide, we're showing those different milestone dates of New Year's and Christmas and so on. You can also tell on this slide that we're indicating that we're currently in orange. And then, of course, compare that to previous times when the county was in orange or along with the city. Next slide, Harold. So this slide is sort of the raw data with a 7-day lag. As we told you in the past, we believe that the wastewater data for Longmont gives us a fairly good correlation for what we should anticipate for the daily 5-day average of new cases in our community. Once again, you can see it is continuing that downward trend, which is a positive sign for us. And then this last slide is the same data with the loading data indicating the 5-day average of the loading data along with the 5-day average of cases. So it just smooths out the sampling data. One other thing I did want to let the council know is we have now sampled twice for the variant of the coronavirus that is reported to have originated in the United Kingdom. We've taken 2 samples and it has not shown up in our community. So at this time, we are not seeing any evidence of the UK variant of the virus in Longmont, and we will continue to test that weekly as well. I'm advised by staff that this testing is quite accurate, and that if we do see the variant, we intend to express it as a percentage of the overall caseload or viral load, if you will, in the community. So with that, that's my quick report for tonight.
All right, Harold. Yep. Thanks, Dale. Anything else from you?
No, I just wanted to present that. Wanted Jeff to also see it, where we're seeing those correlations get pretty tight as the further we get into this. If any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
It doesn't look like we do. So let's move on. And do we have a motion to suspend the council rule of procedure 25B in order to approve the statement denouncing the attack on the United States Capitol on January 6th?
So moved.
I'll
Second.
take that as a motion from Councilmember Martin and a second from Councilmember Christensen. All in favor of suspending the council rules of procedure, say aye.
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 All right. Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. All right, do we have a motion to pass the resolution denouncing the attack on the United States Capitol?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and take Councilmember Waters' motion, since he was the one who drafted the resolution. And it was seconded by Councilmember Peck as well as Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. I know that's outside the rules of procedure, but you both can do it because this was an important one. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. Councilmember Peck?
Mayor Bagley, if you wouldn't mind, may I take advantage of the suspended rules of procedures for an ask?
Go ahead. And I believe Councilmember Peck's going to ask that we put a topic of discussion for next week of the ice rink. Will that fit on the schedule, Harold?
Yeah, we could probably get that on.
Okay, so can we put it on with mayor's prerogative?
Thank
Okay,
you.
no problem. All right, and specifically, Joan, we just want to talk about the emails that people are saying, requesting that we keep it open, correct?
Yes, and the possibility of how we're going to fund it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that your request got on because it is
Yep.
important.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, cool. All right, then let's go ahead and move on to our favorite time of the year, open forum. So we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. If you are listening, now is the time to get in line. So call and get in line, and we'll let you get in as long as that's up. All right, back in a few, guys.
Okay, folks, for those of you watching our live stream, now would be the time to call in. Our toll-free number is 1-888-788-0099. Again, that number is 1-888-788-0099. When prompted, you're going to need the meeting ID. You're going to enter 841-4469-0049. Again, the meeting ID is 841-4469-0049. For the participant ID, press pound. Once you are connected, you will arrive into our waiting room. We will then admit you into the meeting. You will need to mute the live stream so that we're not getting an echo when you unmute yourself. We will call upon you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Please do not hang up. You will lose your line, your place in this line, and you may not get back in because we will lock the meeting at a certain point. Once you're done speaking, feel free to hang up. So again, we will let you into the meeting here shortly. Please mute the live stream and listen to instructions over your phone. Thank you. Hi, folks. As a reminder again, please make sure that you mute the live stream and listen to instructions through your phone. We will begin shortly. Do not hang up until you've been called upon and had your time to speak with counsel. Otherwise, you may not be able to get back in because we will lock this meeting. Mayor, I'm going to drop the screen as it's been 5 minutes, and we'll give our live stream just a few seconds to get caught up with us. And we'll be ready to go when you are.
All right, we all back?
I believe
Okay.
we are.
Cool. Let's go ahead and kick it off. I'll get my timer ready.
And Mayor, did you just want to go through the instructions for calling in again?
Yeah. So what you want to do is dial, though, if you're listening, dial 888-788-0099. And then you're going to go ahead and enter the meeting ID that shows up on your screen. And then when you're asked for your participant ID, press the number sign, or the pound sign, hashtag sign. Once you've joined the meeting, callers will hear confirmation they have entered the meeting. And you'll be told how many others are already participating in the meeting, including callers, staff, and counsel. And then you'll be placed in a virtual waiting room until you're admitted to the meeting. We ask you mute the live stream and listen for instructions on the phone so there's no background noise. Once you're admitted to the meeting from the virtual waiting room, callers will be called upon by the last 3 digits of their phone number and then allowed to unmute to provide their comments one at a time. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person, and each speaker will be asked to state their name and address for the record prior to proceeding with their comments. Of course, council may ask questions or one or more of us might want to engage a certain speaker, which is allowed at the open forum, unlike typical first and last calls of public invited to be heard. Once you are done, the speakers will be moved back to the waiting room and you should just simply hang up. So that's what I should do every week, but it's long and it kind of works. But let's go ahead and open it up to the forum. How many are in the forum? How many are in the queue, first of all?
The last we counted, I believe, is 23.
Wow.
I have not locked the meeting. It's not quite 10 minutes yet. It will be very shortly. So I will allow anyone else who's dialing furiously to get in here within the next minute. But I will unlock this. I will unmute this first caller. The first caller, your phone number ends in 199. 199. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Are you there? Caller 199.
So quick question as we're waiting. I also understand that there's going to be a couple groups of people. Like we received an email from the Longmont area Democrats, and they wanted to read a statement, and there were several people who were together. I don't know if that's possible. I guess you'd need to be in the same room.
Mayor, sometimes we've done that in the past, but I've been notified of that list prior.
Okay.
I have not been notified of any such list for tonight. So if they made it into the call, they will go in the order that I see here listed.
All right. Okay.
So I'm asking caller 199 to unmute. 199, are you there? Hit *6 on your phone. That will unmute you. I'll give you just another couple of seconds and then I'll come back to you. All right, I'll go on to the next caller, caller 271. I'm going to ask you to unmute 271.
Let's try the third one, and then if there's still a problem, I'm going to propose that 3 typically signifies a problem.
Right. Let's try the third caller, 278. 278, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you are.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We sure can. Welcome.
Okay.
Would you please state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Brian Litwin, 2128 23rd Avenue.
Thank you. You may begin.
Okay, thanks. So I just want to bring up a couple topics, and one may be relevant, one may be not. The first one I want to start with is ranked choice voting and the need for Longmont to do this on a municipal level. I have pushed for many years at a state level for us to be like Maine and for us to have ranked choice voting statewide, as well as a federal level. But for the time being, Colorado law only allows municipal level. If anyone needs, I can explain ranked choice voting, but hopefully that already is understood. And, the main thing is that it allows people to vote their conscience. And we shouldn't presume, even though by and large we only have 2 parties, that, here in Longmont, I'm sure there's third parties, there's 4 parties, and people could just vote their conscience. And what I'm asking for you to do at a municipal level here at Longmont is to lead the way in the way, honestly, the state has not, because ranked choice voting is such a no-brainer that I just can't possibly think of a reason why we would not have it at a municipal level. And it's just about equity and fairness so that 2 parties don't dominate all. The other thing I want to discuss is ransomware. And this is one where I'm not sure if it's really for you or at a different level, but obviously we've all seen hospitals and municipalities that have undergone ransomware attacks where they've had to basically pay out through Bitcoin or other various methods. And that's the last thing we want. And what I want is for Longmont to be proactive instead of reactive. I don't want us to wait until a hospital or the city itself has been hacked and for all intents and purposes shut down. I don't want us to have to pay a ransom, which obviously reinforces the criminal's faith in their business model. There are many tools we can use. Many common strains of ransomware have in fact been reverse engineered by software engineers, security firms that provide decryption tools, many for free. There is something called No More Ransom. It's literally a project, No More Ransom project. And they offer tools for free that can help protect municipal level, hospitals, everything you could think of. Another one is ID ransomware. And I just really, like I said, I don't know if this is appropriately directed towards council or if it should go elsewhere, but I really want Longmont to do what it can to protect itself and get ahead of this issue. Thank you so much.
I was expecting an opportunity to respond. I guess we have it.
All right, we'll move on to the next caller. And it looks like a couple other callers have left on their own, so I won't be able to call them out. I will go on to 347. 347. I'm going to ask you to unmute now. Are you there? 347.
And I am getting some texts from people in the community saying that they did call in. The first couple callers called in and they were not on mute, but we still could not hear them. So I would encourage those people to continue.
Can you hear me now?
We'll figure it out.
One moment, caller.
So,
Mayor, what would you like me to do? I'm not sure I understand.
Just letting you know, just make sure they stay in the queue. And then after this caller, let's go back to that first one and then the second one.
I'm not able to. Those callers have left the meeting.
All right. Well, if those callers can hear, call back in, please.
I know. Hello.
Hello. One moment, please. So as a reminder for folks, we have unlocked the meeting. So we had a couple of initial callers leave the meeting. The mayor's asked if you are still watching our live stream to please call back in. All right, caller 347, you may begin by stating your name and address. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Ben Sargent. I'm at 744 Atwood Street. And thank you, Mayor and Council. It's great to be able to talk. I am calling again this week about the smart meter issue. And I just wanted to reiterate points that I've already made and maybe provide a little bit more background. And there's a number of issues with smart meters, and so I don't want to just limit it to one of the topics here, but basically smart meters are not necessary to put on every house. That's the main issue, is that with just over 400 units, we could achieve all of the goals, the stated goals of the project. And so the, investing in smart meters for all residences and all apartments is unnecessary use of taxpayer funds. If there's other issues that are, or benefits to the city through sale of data or some other thing that we don't know about, then, those need to be shared with the community. But from what we know, the stated goals have to do with energy regulation, energy monitoring, and energy performance throughout the town. And as I said, 400 units would be sufficient. So there's three areas of danger or risk with smart meters. One is fires. I wouldn't want one of these on my house. It's not properly grounded. And secondly, the data security. We don't really know how that data is going to be used. And assurances from, government, workers who may be completely honest and think that it's fine, don't necessarily know what's actually going to happen with that data once it goes out of the house. The third issue is the green issue. Supposedly it's being done because of, for ecology reasons. But in fact, data is a massive energy hog. And all of that data needs to be stored somewhere on a machine live using electricity 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And so, producing and storing all of that data is not green. And the final issue is that, the non-ionizing radiation, which the industry claims is not harmful to humans. In fact, there's dozens or hundreds of research reports that show that it does cause issues not only for humans but for all animals, bees, insects, etc. So the safety measures that are used to monitor these kinds of things are woefully out of date, and the industry and the government the U.S. government are not updating those regulations to current science. So that's basically what I had to say tonight. Thank you again. I encourage you to really think about this issue and not spend taxpayer money on something that is not going to achieve the goals and creates all of these other risks, from data to health to increasing energy, not reducing it. Thanks. That's it for me.
Caller, would you stay on the line? It appears that council has a question.
Okay.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Caller, what is your basis for saying that 400 meters would be sufficient? Are you aware of the topology of our distribution grid?
That is a number that was provided by I believe, Professor Sheckley. I could be wrong on who I'm quoting on that. I did not make up that number. That was a number that was generated by somebody who's knowledgeable in the field. I could send you an email later if I can track down the source of that.
Well, I've had conversations with Professor Shockley, and he is not aware of the topology of Longmont's distribution grid, so I'm not sure he could arrive at a number that way. It's pretty hard to find that out.
No. But I think the principle stands that it's not necessary to put a meter on every house to understand the energy demands that are happening minute by minute throughout the city.
No, it's
so whether it's 400 or 1,400, it's certainly not necessary to put one on every house.
No, it's necessary to provide some benefits to the householder to have a smart meter. But if they're not interested in that, I agree that that householder doesn't have to have a smart meter. The other question that I have is can you explain the physics of non-ionizing radiation causing cellular damage? I can explain the physics of ionizing radiation causing cellular damage. So could you, but I can't do
yeah, I've seen some reports on it. I'm not, I don't think I can do justice to it, but I would be happy to send you some research on that.
I would appreciate it very much. Marcia.martin@longmontcolorado.gov.
Excellent. Yes, I will do that.
As a point of privilege from the chair, Councilmember Martin, I appreciate you not explaining that this evening. Thank you.
Yes, especially given that I'm.
I would have been like,
it's been a long day already.
Yeah. All right, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Actually, Councilwoman Martin asked the same question I was going to about the 400 meters. So thank you, Ben, for calling in.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Have a good evening.
All right. Next caller.
So one of the callers did call back in. So I'm going to go back to 271. I'm going to ask you to unmute. And as a reminder, folks, the stream is going to be delayed 20 to 30 seconds or more, depending on your device and how you're connected. So please make sure that you listen to instructions through your telephone. There you are, 271. You may begin.
Hi there, council members. My name is Diana Chavez. I live at 1850 Princess Drive. I am a Longmont resident. I have a few concerns. The first is, I've lived in Longmont for a very long time, and as I've driven through downtown Longmont recently, the decimation and of businesses and how downtown is so so desolate really is very disheartening and discouraging to me. And I'm really concerned about what steps the council has in mind to once again rebuild Longmont after the devastation of COVID-19. You know, the Longmont Downtown Authority was a huge emphasis for many years, and it really became a vibrant downtown area, and unfortunately that's not the case anymore. You know, I recently heard that the unemployment rate in Colorado is at approximately 30%, and my offering would be that as a city, I think that we need to really figure out how to move beyond the fear and take a hold of our community and help our population thrive again. And I would suggest that perhaps each of you could look at what the community of Monument really recently did to reopen their community and encourage their businesses to reopen. Given that we are talking about a virus with better than a 99% survival rate, the decimation and destruction in our community is way beyond measure for a virus of such a minuscule, I don't know what word to use, but it's just very concerning to me. The other thing that I would like to comment about is also, as Ben suggested, is the smart meters. And, you know, technology is really great until it's not. And technology really seems to be overtaking our lives in many ways. And in some ways it's good. I think that in other ways it is more destructive than beneficial. And as the 5G gets rolled out and all these various things, I think that we need to really step back and take a closer look at what the effects are on our health and population. And you know, this has been an ongoing issue. Unfortunately, I'm not good at quoting stats and all of that, but as we continue to roll out all of this technology, social media, and various other things, we already know that it has a detrimental effect on our health and well-being. And given all that our community has gone through in the past year, I don't think that now is the time to roll out something that is going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars and also bring an increase to utility bills at a time, as I said previously, when unemployment is very high. People are struggling individually, families are struggling, students are struggling. I think that at this time, there is a much better way to be investing tax dollars in our community. And I thank you for your time and attention.
That was exactly 5 minutes. Thank you. Councilmember Christensen.
Just as a point of information, I just looked up on the Colorado Labor Department of Labor and Employment, and it says that the current rate of unemployment in Colorado is 6.4%. That's according to the Department of Labor. So just a point of information. But I I do appreciate what she said. We know that we have a big problem with unemployment and jobs, but it isn't quite as bad as it isn't 30%.
All right, next caller.
All right. The next caller, your phone number ends in 400. 400. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Try that again. There you are.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. You may begin.
Yes, this is Marcia Dirks. Hello, Mayor and Council.
Can you state your address,
yes.
please?
Yes, I live at 12874 North 95th Street. And I said I'm Marcia Dirks, and I do the media and communications for Longmont area Democrats. And I'm the person calling in to read our statement in support of our electeds and in support of democracy. I'm going to go ahead and read it. It won't take long. To all Colorado federal, state, county, and city elected officials and public servants. These are very difficult and hazardous times for our democracy. We, the undersigned individuals and organizations, support you and your ongoing public service on behalf of our communities, our state, the United States of America, and all who call America home. We, the undersigned, stand with you in your dedication to the American values and principles of democracy and rule of law as enshrined in our U.S. Constitution. We support equitable treatment and opportunities for all people living in our country, no exceptions. On January 6th, we saw violence at our U.S. Capitol, a repudiation of our priceless freedoms and the integrity of our elections, freedoms that are embodied within and depend upon democracy and rule of law. We are also seeing a false comparison of the actions on January 6th with the primarily peaceful civil rights protests across our nation last spring and summer. But violence and destruction will never represent the values of people who aspire to live in peace. We acknowledge with gratitude your steadfast efforts on behalf of all of your constituents and all residents of the United States. We honor your devotion to the good of the entire community. We also expect that you will work with each other in a spirit of partnership to foster the best outcomes. We encourage you to continue your valuable and deeply appreciated service on our behalf. Also that, in Lincoln's immortal words, government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. With our thanks and respect, signed, Longmont area Democrats. And just to let everybody know, we've posted the statement on our website at longmontdems.org. Anybody can sign on to the statement, and we will be posting shortly all of the people who have signed on. And I just really appreciate having the opportunity to read it here tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dirks, on behalf of all of council. Councilmember Peck.
Actually, you just said what I was going to say, Mayor Bagley. Thank you, Marisa, and that goes very perfectly with our resolution that we just passed. So thank you again.
And I just want to chime in so I've been doing this. I'm coming up on 10 years now on this council in one way or another. I've served for almost a decade, and we have gone the rounds among ourselves and previous council members over politics and posturing and personal tips. This last year, just before, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but this last year with the political climate and COVID, it's almost like nobody could go see a movie. We couldn't go out to eat. So let's just watch a reality TV show called Our President and the Campaign. And it just filtered down to all levels, social media, real life, and it has just been exhausting. And so I appreciate that statement because it has felt far heavier than other years. So thank you, Ms. Dirks. All right.
Yeah, well, we really do appreciate you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. Very, very kind of you to say that. All right, next caller.
Yes, the next caller, your phone number ends in 414. I'm going to ask you to unmute 414.
Hi, this is Sharon O'Leary, 534 Emery Street. I just want to thank you for providing an open forum for the citizens of Longmont. I know it's going to be a long evening for you, and I appreciate you providing this opportunity. First, I want to raise your awareness about the closing of additional streets that will greatly impact the east-west corridors for Kensington Park and the historic East Side residential neighborhoods. Both of these neighborhoods share 9th Avenue as their northern boundary, and then they either have 3rd or 4th Avenue as a southern boundary for their neighborhoods. Within these two neighborhoods, residents have 8th Avenue, Longs Peak, 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue, and 4th Avenue as their residential corridor to access streets. 9th and 3rd Avenue are 4-lane arterial streets. So parents and students in this school attendance area in these two neighborhoods would include Columbine and Rocky Mountain Elementary School, Timberline and St. John's K-8 schools, Trail Ridge Middle School, and Skyline High School. It's also their access to our city library. When looking at neighborhood access, you'll see that 8th Avenue is closed. Its east-west corridor is closed due to the railroad. In the 80s, the city's closed off the street in a deal with the railroad in order to create an access in the northern section of the city for development. Longs Peak east-west corridor is completely open and also provides unobstructed local access. 6th Avenue does not have complete east-west access due to the 6th Avenue Plaza. 5th Avenue presently has complete east-west access, and 4th Avenue has sporadic access depending on downtown concerts or activities. It is a city priority as well as a citizen's priority to have accessible corridors and access for bikes, cars, and pedestrians according to our Envision Longmont plan. And this would allow for safe movement of all people. The concern I want you to think about is another proposal for another east-west corridor being closed off to these eastern neighborhoods due to a potential deal with the railroad and the city's Boston Street plan or project. The city's proposing closing off 5th Avenue in order to attain this. The resulting effect on Kensington Park and the historic East Side neighborhood would be out of their 5 local street east-west corridors, only 2 would remain completely open. 8th and 5th Avenue would be closed because of the railroad. 6th Avenue would be closed according to because of the plaza. And then 4th Avenue, we could lose access if something's going on downtown. Additional compounding factors now would be the addition of multifamily residential structures being added on 3rd Avenue south. So Longmont has the completion of the South Main Station, which presently has one of the 5 buildings filled. This is going to greatly impact corridor access on 3rd Avenue. And we can only anticipate further development along 3rd Avenue, which is a high priority in the Envision Longmont plan. And this is a part of the downtown redevelopment area zoned mixed use. Right now, there's a 68 affordable housing unit plan for 3rd and Atwood, and I'm certain this is one of several to come. So this increase in density housing only makes the need for neighborhood local corridor access a necessity. Finally, let's just talk about the elephant in the room, the train. This is a constant disruption for Kensington Park and historic East Side neighborhoods when they're traveling east or west. It's not only the train traffic and the length of the train that impacts neighbors on a regular basis, but there's another thing that you might not be aware of, and that's called train idling. This is where the train just stops and blocks between 4th Avenue and 9th Avenue. Not sure why they idle. They're not hooking up with other cars. I think they're taking a break. And so we can call in and they don't move the train, but they just make a record. But this happens daily. So the train just sits there, idles, blocks access. My greatest concern when closing off east-west access to neighborhoods is the timeliness of emergency vehicles getting to homes, safety to students and families who are attending their local school or the library, or just even trying to go visit a friend, go to the store, or go to events.
Ms. O'Leary?
We all want a resilient.
Ms. O'Leary,
What?
we hit 5 minutes, 15 seconds. I'm going to have to cut
Oh,
you
I'll
off.
stop.
That's all
I'm
right.
just asking, please don't. My thing is, please don't close off any more streets within this area. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't think it's, Harold, you just heard it. Please take it into account. All right. Next caller.
All right, our next caller, your phone number ends in 422. 422. I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you are.
Hello.
Hello. You may begin.
Good evening, council members. My name is Melissa Chopin, and I'm actually not a resident, but I do own a multifamily property located at 326 Baker Street.
Can you could you still provide your address for us so we know where you're from?
I actually live in Lyons at 128 Sombrero Court in Lyons.
Thank you.
You bet. And the reason why I'm calling this evening, and thank you so much for your time, I'm calling about the proposed affordable housing development there on 3rd Avenue and Atwood. First of all, I would like to thank Councilmember Waters for his prompt reply to my email concerning this issue because I wasn't really quite sure what to do. I received notification, but then was informed that there would be no public meetings concerning this. I did send emails to the planning department, but as this whole thing unfolds, I just have a few more questions for the council concerning this project. This project, originally I thought it was going to be rental units, but I have discovered that it is going to be sold off. 65 units is the current number that I received from the developer. 65 units in this area between the alley and Atwood and 3rd and about halfway up the block to 4th. I think I know affordable housing is a huge priority for the council, and I agree with that. This is going to be housing for working families of Longmont, and I think that's a great thing. What my major concern, though, is parking. One of the problems is, I guess the council had come up with something, correct me if I'm wrong, that when affordable housing projects come up, they only have to have one parking place per unit, as opposed to another type of development of 2-bedroom units would have 2 parking places. I see this as an issue in the area directly affecting the block where my building is at. Currently in my building, I have 2 1-bedroom units that have to have parking on the street on that 300 block of Baker Street. My other 2-bedroom units have 2 parking places on site for each unit. And so what I'm concerned about is there won't be any additional parking on 3rd Avenue. There's very limited parking on Atwood. And I guess since these are going to be sold off units, I would assume these working families are going to have some kind of transportation. And I just see a conflict in parking in the area. So my family has owned this building for 20 years in Longmont, and I've been working on it for 20 years. I do my own management, and there has been a lot of conflict with parking in that block for many years. There's been confrontations amongst the neighbors, and the way I see it, we're kind of the closest block to this project, and there's going to be a lot of overflow parking in our area. As far as I know that there are studies of proposed developments that include traffic and fire and environment and drainage and all of that. And I guess I just question whether maybe with some of these projects, perhaps a neighborhood impact study would be beneficial, or maybe council could look at some alternatives or maybe just increased parking. Because like I said, I would assume, and maybe I'm incorrect, that the majority of these working families are going to have vehicles for transportation. Finally, I just wanted to let the council know I'm a member of the crime-free multi-housing program with the city of Longmont, and I've been a member of that for 10 years. My building is certified crime-free housing, and I try to be a good neighbor. And I want to let council know how impressed I am with the crime-free program. As I'm sure you're aware, we had an incident on New Year's Day in the 300 block of Baker Street, and I was very aware and able to communicate with my residents during the SWAT team lockdown. But that's all I wanted to say, and I hope you can look into that more, or maybe I should be approaching the planning department more with my ideas. But I just wasn't sure, and this is the first time I've ever talked to the council, so I thank you for your time.
Don't hang up.
Okay.
Councilmember Christensen, and then Councilmember Martin.
Thank you to Ms. Chauvin. Did I get that right? For calling. I think you bring up a lot of good points, and maybe you could write me separately and we could talk about things. I have been concerned for a while that we are overly optimistic about how few vehicles there will be for some of these units. It's an incentive we gave people, developers, for developing these units, but I do worry about many of these developments impacting the neighborhood with having an impossible time, everybody having an impossible time trying to find a place to park. And I think she's right to be concerned about her neighbors, her renters. So I do thank you, and I thank you for participating in the drug-free or crime-free program. Thanks.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes, I would like to ask the caller, or perhaps to inform the caller that this 65-unit development is planning to provide buyers with a credit toward an e-bike, as well as annual eco passes for busing. And it is a goal in Envision Longmont that Longmont become a walkable city where one doesn't need a car. So I wanted to ask you how you would feel about doing that for your tenants. Maybe not the e-bike because your margins aren't that big, but maybe buy them an eco pass. Think about it.
Well, I appreciate that comment. Now, when I kind of look at it, of course, who I rent to with the 2 bedrooms are small families with children, with small children, and I don't know about an e-bike. Kind of working out with that when we have to go grocery shopping and tote our little one. But as far as the mass transportation, we're talking about little ones like babies that have to be in baby carriers, and so I don't know. I could try to approach them with that, but I do see that as difficulty. With families with small children, trying to use transportation and e-bikes, and especially if you're buying a large amount of groceries. You can only carry so much, but if you have a family of 4, it would seem to me even getting on a bus would be difficult with that.
Well, but your 4 have off-street parking already.
Yes, that's true, and that's why I'm thinking with this multifamily, perhaps over time, but I don't know how much time it will take for that. This area doesn't really have a grocery store within walking distance. There's no drugstore within. I think the nearest drugstore would be the Walgreens up at 10th and Main, and the nearest grocery store is the Safeway on Ken Pratt, I believe. And so, those distances kind of contribute to the difficulty that I would see where people are going to have cars. you know, because you got to be able to move a lot more things than just yourself, you know, as far as when you go shopping. But I understand that the developer has proposed that also, and but I guess I just think there's still going to be people that have to have the cars to get to work. And I would assume, like I said, this is going to be a good group of working class Longmont families. And it's been my experience, at least in my rentals, that most everyone has a car.
All right, thank you. Or Dr. Waters, sorry.
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. Ms. Chopin, thanks for your call. It may be that council members can help me with this. If not, if either Kathy or Harold or somebody else who's deeply knowledgeable of where we ended up with all of the specifics of our inclusionary housing ordinance and the incentives, et cetera. Let me just say, I know the developer in this case, and I've shared this with Ms. Chopin. He's a stand-up guy. I think they do good work. However, I think he has real legitimate concerns about parking in this area, and it's my understanding that these are for sale property. This is a project that would be for sale properties that would take advantage of the mid-tier exception. They're not affordable, they're attainable. Is that clear? Is that accurate, Harold?
So that's what I understood. I think there was some information that came across today that it may be changing. So it's been sort of a moving target.
Right. I've been in meetings all day long for different, doing the people's work, by the way, but I've been in meetings all day long. So
yes, that's what I understood. That's what I understood last week, I think.
So for any project, any development that is building mid-tier housing, the incentive we created for them is that they don't have to pay a fee in lieu, right?
Correct.
But they don't get a pass on the parking requirements. Is that not also the case?
Correct. The parking and the height variances come in based on the affordable housing piece in that section. So it really depends on what they put into play and what they bring forward in their submittal. The middle tier, if you will remember, will vary. So 80 to 100 is 0. And then you have 100 to 110 that has more
one discount than a different discount.
10 to 120. So you've got to do all the math to then figure out what's the requirement.
But those discounts were on the payment in lieu. That was unrelated to parking, as I recall.
Correct.
So, because I know there are other residents in this part of town who are listening to this conversation tonight, and because I've read the comments, there are other people concerned that this is an attainable housing project, not a subsidized, affordable unit for sale, and the same kind of standards would apply for parking under those conditions that they do to any development, correct?
Correct, and under a traditional...
It's a parking unit, it's a parking space and a half for a 1-bedroom, two parking spaces for a 2-bedroom. Is that right?
Correct, and under the traditional development process, they can ask for a variance.
Yeah.
But that's a different process.
All right, thank you.
Just as a point of information, the replacement proposal that neither of these two gentlemen have read yet incorporates 15% deed restricted affordable units.
All right, next
Thanks.
caller.
All right, thank you. Caller ending in 443. 443. You may state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jim Manzanares, and I live at 2435 Lily Court, Unit 315, otherwise known as the Village Cooperative of Longmont. It is a 52-unit senior living facility. I come to speak opposing the variance requested by the real estate equities for the vacant lot across the street from our cooperative. At this time, I and other members of the cooperative oppose this on several issues. I will address only some of those issues, as other members will address some of the other issues to save some time, because we weren't sure we'd get it all in 5 minutes. At this time, we have very little information about the proposed site other than it involved a change from an 8 single detached homes to 8 paired homes, or 16 separate units. Real Estate Equities did not inform us of this change, and we found out about this from a city bulletin, which was kind of bad. We actually have a pretty good relationship with them, but in fact, they are our management company and didn't tell us anything about this. As I said, other cooperative members will speak about some other issues. I will speak to our concern about safety issues. The age of our members ranges from about 62 years of age to 93 years of age. This often means that we are in need of emergency vehicles to respond to our building at a more frequent basis than other high-density apartments or buildings. One of our concerns is that adding 16 units might mean many more vehicles in this area. If the planned parking for the new paired houses is not adequate, then the possibility exists of vehicles being parked in the street, possibly hindering fire trucks or ambulances from having easy access to our building. I am hopeful that the fire marshal and other city planners would make sure that our cooperative continues to have the excellent response we have from our responders. And I want to give a shout out to our fire department and the EMTs that respond to our building. Our objections are based on what we don't know as well as what we know. We have always been aware that 8 homes would be built on these lots and had no problem with this as we bought our units knowing this. This request for a change was never communicated to us. I hope that giving our thoughts on this issue allows us to have some input on this variance. We understand that our concerns have to go to the board that handles these things, but we did want the city council to be aware of our concerns in the beginning of this process. We think we're good neighbors and we're good people in the co-op. We will be good neighbors to the people when they do build over there, whatever it is they build. But we are concerned because of now we've just doubled up how much parking we're going to need. And as you can tell, on a lot of other issues, I mean, parking becomes a big deal. So, but in this case, if we have cars parked on that street, it might be difficult for fire engines to get in there. And like I said, it's kind of important to us in our building.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Manzanares, for calling and letting us be aware of this. I'm wondering if it's possible for us to, a lot of places around nursing homes and various other places like that have a dedicated area that you can't park in, similar to you can't park in a bus zone, and you can't park in these emergency vehicle areas. Couldn't we, as a city, do something like that to be sure that there's always a way for emergency vehicles to have direct, safe access to any resident in this co-op?
Are you still here, sir?
Yes. That's one of the things that we had considered, was if we could get some of that a non-parking zone, so that we could have everybody get in there easy. I mean, we've already had several times we've had to have emergency vehicles in there. And right now, because there's nothing across the street, it's very easy for them to get in there. So I do think that's a possibility. I mean, I would like you to consider.
Did we lose him?
No, I'm still here.
Okay. Okay, anything
I wasn't
else?
sure if you wanted more of an answer.
No, Harold?
Just so council knows, I think this project, they've come in for a pre-application process, but they actually haven't come in with an application. Obviously, these are all things that we have to look into once they come in with an application. It has to go through all the review by the various departments to ensure that health safety is all taken into account on this. And so I think they're starting it, but we haven't seen a formal application yet.
All right, Dr. Waters?
That is correct. And we felt, we just wanted to make sure that our voices were heard at an early part, because if it gets too deep into it, the changes would be financial, and we're just trying to work with them to see if we can get something going here to help us all out.
So, Harold, that was your signal that there's a lot that's going to unfold here around this project, and it's in the very, very early stages. But I do want to just, and it sounds to me like Mr. Manzanares, you have other people in the queue who want to speak to this. It's my understanding that this doubling of the number of housing units on that piece of property is tied into the sale of the property. Is that correct?
That was our understanding.
So it's your yeah. Oh, so that's still that may not be the case.
Our understanding is I spoke to someone from the city, and they told us that there was. We don't know who the buyer is, by the way. Real Estate Equities is not developing this property. They are selling the property to someone else.
For someone else to develop. I guess what's important for, especially given what Harold said, that everyone understands, especially whoever's considering buying a piece of property, if somebody's having a conversation about selling that piece of property, assuming that you can double the number of units on it, that's a pretty tenuous assumption, I would think, given the fact that it requires a variance. The site plan was approved with 8 units. This is the village co-op in which people have been waiting for years to get into. And now, shortly after moving in, there's a fairly significant change occurring across the street. And whoever's paying attention to this conversation and that potential sale should understand that this has a long way to go if it's going to be approved. Is that true, Harold?
If I can jump in to answer some of those questions, and phenomenal staff that's communicating with me. Based on what they're seeing in the pre-app, it will have to go to Planning and Zoning Commission. Don's also indicating that I think this is the neighborhood meeting notice that started the conversation, that always starts a conversation. But this will also require a concept plan amendment, and it has to come to the city council as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this that I don't think we've even seen it in terms of a formal application, so staff can comment, but many of these things will have to go to Planning and Zoning and city council members.
Thanks.
Yeah, there will be a meeting next week that we also will attend, but we wanted to make sure that the council was aware of our concerns.
All right, next caller.
All right. At a glance, at least a dozen or more.
Okay, great.
Yep. So the next caller is caller 466. Caller 466. You can unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record. And
hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Am I ready to go?
You are. State your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Judith Blackburn, 3724 Oakwood Drive in Longmont. Good evening, Council and Mayor Bagley. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for joining those other local officials in signing on to a letter to President-elect Biden, drafted by Colorado Mountain Pact. As reported yesterday in the Times Call, you and the other local officials requested a shared voice on federal policy related to climate and public lands. This fits well with Council's ongoing commitment to 100% renewable energy for Longmont by 2030. But as with that commitment, the devil is in the details. If the Biden administration follows through on its pledge to make our climate crisis a priority, there will surely be a focus on air quality, and specifically on slowing fossil fuel emissions, not only to address global warming and changing weather patterns, but also for reasons of public health. We here in Longmont will have something to share about how to do that if we take advantage of the tools at our disposal. One such tool is the new power accorded to local governments by the passage of SB 19181, which allows local governments to adopt more strict oil and gas regulations than what the state requires. Another tool is our access to sophisticated air monitoring conducted on the east and west sides of Longmont by Dr. Detlef Helmig. which is readily accessible to the public. That research, as recorded on HELMEG's website, shows recent alarming spikes in the release of methane, butane, and benzene, which other speakers this evening may say more about in terms of health and climate consequences. My questions to you regarding Longmont's air quality are the following. First, according to Rule 903 in the COGCC regulations, local governments and emergency responders are supposed to get prior knowledge of such flaring and venting at nearby wells, which apparently did cause these recently spiking numbers. Or you should receive subsequent notice when such spikes are the result of emergencies rather than intentional planning. Has that been the case here recently? Were you or city staff alerted recently when these upticks in dangerous air quality levels occurred? If so, what were the consequences? And finally, we all realize that Dr. HELMEG's air quality research has been quite damning to the safety claims of oil and gas operators. To the extent that HELMEG was summarily fired from CU on trumped-up charges that were at least partially related to his contract with Longmont for doing this monitoring at all, and even through and especially because of this contract and between HELMEG and Longmont, it did not go through CU. And because of that, I'm wondering, is there anything you can do as Longmont City Council or have done to contradict CU's accusations against HELMEG's so-called bookkeeping, or to publicly defend HELMEG's reputation? I'll be interested in your answer to these questions, and I encourage you to stay vigilant and on the air pollution issue and climate crisis front. After all, when it comes to the air we breathe, we're most definitely all in this together. Thank you.
Oh, stay on the line for us.
Thank you. Councilmember Peck.
Okay.
Thank you for calling in, Judith, and for your comments. Yes, the city is aware of the spikes in the VOCs. I'm not sure at this point. We'll have to check with Jane to see if this was because of a leak or was it just pure venting. And my question is going to be to our staff, either to Harold or Eugene. What can we as a city do about the spiking and letting agencies know about our air quality here? Is the city in a position to do anything about that? Or is, because it is public knowledge, can this information be used by outside organizations monitoring air quality?
I'm gonna ask Dale to come in to help make sure I answer this correctly.
Okay.
Dale, are you there?
Yes.
I want to say in one of my, Jane, we forwarded this information to the COGCC, correct?
Yes. Yes, we've reported it to the regulatory agencies, which is really what the city can do when it comes to our attention.
Okay. Have we received any response from them at all on this?
Unfortunately, Councilmember Peck, I don't believe so. I met with Jane today. She didn't tell me that we've received any response. When I was speaking with Jane today, I also suggested that we may want to put this type of information in a notification that would go out to concerned people in the community that want to know, as well as posting it on our website. So, you know, what we're trying to do is be as transparent as we can when we see this kind of information, and certainly get it to the officials that are really in the responsible role for regulation.
Okay. My other question, this is just a long vision, is that because of the alerts, because of the damage to health, I think it would be a good conversation at some point to have about having phone alerts to people that this is happening, so that they can be aware and take responsibility for their own health and do whatever they need to do. So thank you, Harold.
The other thing I would add, just Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Peck, is that Jane will be giving you, making a presentation and giving you an update on oil and gas issues. I believe it's the February 9th meeting.
9th.
So she's coming up to talk with you about that as well. Okay.
Okay. So Judith, if you're still on the line, did you get that we're going to have a presentation?
Yep, I wrote it in my date book already. I'll be back.
There you go. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
If
Thank you all very much.
1 minute.
If I can add some additional information, I know that they've added a news category on the e-news that we do for air quality. So they're starting to work on that, and we'll have more information for council.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good.
All right, next caller.
All right. Caller ending in 499. Caller ending in 499.
Hello?
Hello, you may state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. This is Doe Kelly of Barberry Drive in Longmont. This is on smart meters. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics in 2013, children are disproportionately affected by environmental exposures, including cell phone radiation. You have heard my voice, you've heard from my voice tonight and in the past, and now I'd like you to hear from a younger voice, the voice of a 12-year-old girl speaking to her city council, and I hope that they can hear her. I hope you phone, a cell tower in the neighborhood, and one on the side of your house called a wireless smart meter. This is from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and I quote, "Hi, my name is Amelia. I am 12 years old, and I thank you for letting me speak tonight. I have called into open comments during Pittsfield City Council meetings before. I have let the mayor and the city council know that my sister and I have been experiencing symptoms since the cell tower in my neighborhood was turned on. I get dizzy and nauseous and sleep with a vomiting bucket near my bed. My sister gets headaches and skin rashes. We both have trouble sleeping. Before Christmas, my little sister had really bad days. The radio frequency radiation in her room measured higher than it ever had. Her symptoms were so bad just from being in the room that my parents had to take her bed out and put it in a room farther away from the tower. During the holiday, neighbors came by and told us how they were feeling. Some people live even closer to the tower than we do. There are children younger than us who live right next to it. We learned some of them have constant ringing in their ears and others have vertigo and are actually spending time in their car instead of in their home just to get away from the tower. People who can stay elsewhere have left, but this is not sustainable, and it is no way to live. We also learned a neighbor was diagnosed with cancer. We don't want to leave our home, but if we stay, will we get cancer too? End quote from a 12-year-old girl. And I know this to be true from speaking with many people with electrosensitivity, that we have terrible symptoms. So the following that I'm going to read to you is from an email that I'm going to forward to each of you that you can delve into it and read and view more about smart meter dangers. And I would ask you also to forward the email for the links to anyone listening to this call who asks for it. So if you devote some time viewing and reading what's presented in the below referenced links, exploring the data science and further links, I don't see how that you could, in good conscience, continue your present trajectory towards implementing the AMI wireless smart meter program
it's my view we all should be taking appropriate direction from, first, the precautionary principle, and second, to people who really inhabit the terrain who are in our midst, and by that I mean Dr. Sheckley in Boulder, and as well as such eminent health experts as Dr. David Carpenter and Dr. Deborah Davis of the Environmental Health Trust, who are among other esteemed and learned experts on this topic of wireless harm. This is also a question of equity, and should everybody have a smart meter in Longmont, and as estimated by the experts, 5 to 10% of the entire population is electrosensitive, whether they know it or not, how is this at all fair? Education is key here. So how many people in Longmont actually know what a wireless smart meter is? And when I'm interacting with people in the public and I ask if they know Longmont is going to roll out smart meters and are they concerned, more often than not the answer is, what's a smart meter? This happens time and again. How can you be planning on rolling out technology that's not well understood by the public, the majority of which are already convinced by marketing that anything smart is to their benefit, when clearly, according to the science, certainly in this case, it is not. I pray you all visit the listed websites in my email so you can avail yourselves of the expertise therein and then act accordingly. I am an environmentally concerned person and wish for the survival of all life on Earth, but I think there are other safer routes to arrive at the same destination. Dr. Sheckley's Emma is an example of a wired project that utilizes solar and battery storage. There's another that I know of in Basalt, Colorado, under the auspices of Golden's National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL, that some of you are familiar with. And you could be asking, can a network as large and complicated as a national power grid really operate in a decentralized, automated way? The authors of the article at the link that I include in this email say, our research says definitely yes. And I know the city has got experimental projects that deal with solar and building electrification, but wouldn't it be smarter if Longmont called for a temporary moratorium on the AMI rollout while you gather more information in the goal of 100% renewable energy? Why not explore the future of electrical grids with Dr. Sheckley and NREL? Couldn't that lead to the greater good, especially considering AMI is likely to be obsolete before 2030 probably? And why not consider a pilot program using a prototype of experimental grid models here? Why not let Longmont lead the way?
Ma'am, I appreciate you for your comments, but
that's good. I'm fine.
Over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, though. All right, appreciate it.
All right.
All right, no questions or comments. All right, next caller.
Okay. Caller ending in 515. Caller ending in 515. You should be able to unmute yourself. *6 to unmute. And you can state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes. Caller 515, looks like you're unmuted, but we can't quite hear you.
Let's try the next one, and we'll come back and try again.
Yeah.
Try
Hello.
again. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. This is Mike Schnauzmeyer at 69 Hosaltover Road, Honorable Mayor Bagley and City Council, regarding an effective post-COVID recovery. As a longtime advocate for saint rain flood mitigation and climate change resilience, and as an original co-founder of Sustainable Resilient Longmont, Startup Longmont, and the Tinker Mill, I wanted to personally extend kudos and my gratitudes to City Council, City staff, and the Climate Action Task Force for the tremendous progress being made in moving Longmont towards a more climate resilient future. It has been 14 years now since I first stood before Council in an effort to raise awareness and action on mitigating the threat of a potential and imminent $300 million catastrophic 100-year flood event. Here today, I wanted to also commend the city and staff for its truly fantastic job they are doing in the St. Vrain RSVP project since that event actually did occur. While I do applaud this great flood mitigation work being performed, it is important to recognize that this work is being done largely in reaction to the flood event, not proactively to avoid it because it was not considered practical to do so at the time. As a consequence, arguably hundreds of millions of dollars has been lost in public and private wealth, and possibly millions more by missing out on being viable contenders for huge post-disaster funding opportunities, such as the $2 billion National Disaster Resilience Competition. For me, the number one lesson to be learned from the 2013 flood is that it demonstrated that the cost of inaction often far exceeds the cost of proactively taking action. Today, our society in Longmont faces multiple unprecedented and concurrent existential threats. These threats need to be addressed proactively with an approach of long-term holistic systems thinking, not analog thinking and not reactively. As a new administration is established in Washington and federal agencies begin shifting policy focus to addressing a climate crisis, it can be anticipated that hundreds of billions of federal dollars and trillions of private sector investment will be directed at this effort. Having visionary initiatives and actionable projects to these multiple concurrent crises will be critical to being a viable contender for participation in this massive economic transformation. Having climate resilience, digital technology, and structural social change at the core of the city's COVID recovery actions will be central to any successful economic recovery effort in Longmont's future. Here's one vision for such a future. Longmont has become a national leader in modeling recovery from the COVID crisis and economic downturn by emerging with a robust and thriving economy, including widespread jobs and new business creation. Key to the success has been the city's response, not only to the pandemic downturn, but also by being actively engaged in using holistic systems thinking approaches to address multiple and unprecedented concurrent threats of climate change, global ecological degradation, the digital age revolution, massive jobs distributions, urban sprawl, and core systemic socioeconomic issues. I've been working on an informal framework and list of questions that I hope to soon share with Council that may inspire discussions around a more systemic thinking approach to Longmont's COVID recovery. Here are three, if I have time, of those many questions. Regarding climate change and massive funding, how can the city encourage the development of denser, net zero, walkable, car-free, 20-minute complete community projects? How can the Longmont position itself with visionary projects and initiatives to become a leading contender in the national and global competition for massive grant funding and business investments? Regarding the pandemic, how can Longmont develop, test, trace, and track protocols and demonstrate them to the public in a more acceptable manner for rapid rollout in the event of future possibly more contagious and more deadly pandemics? And finally, regarding the digital age revolution, 5G and smart city tech, how can the city begin to design, demonstrate, and deploy digital 5G and smart city technologies through local projects and safely roll them out in a manner acceptable to the residents affected?
All right, Mike, I'm gonna have to cut you off. That's 5 minutes, a little over 5 minutes, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, next caller.
All right, caller ending in 576. 576, you should be able to unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Susan Fisher. I'm another person speaking about the Village Cooperative. My address is 2435 Lily Court, Unit 302. And first, I'd like to thank Councilman Waters for helping us figure out what this process is about. It's new to us. Secondly, I'd like to be sure that you know exactly where we're located, which is basically on the southeast corner of Highway 66 in Alpine. So knowing that, you know that it's already, the density of building here is just amazing. So another thing that I just have a few additional facts. Jim covered a lot of our territory, and by the way, Jim is on our board of directors. But you need to know that the proposed increased density lots are not just houses across the street from us. We're actually legally tied through action that our developer took before we moved in. We are in a master HOA with these houses. So we're feeling very left in the dark by our developer at the same time as we're legally tied to being in community with them, with these people that will move in here. Clearly, these are not going to be, they're going to be expensive homes. They're not affordable housing, and they're not on a transit corridor. We feel like, so we have one narrow court that comes into that property and services both sides of the street, both that individual homes as well as our building. And it's definitely too narrow for parking because if there was parking on it, there would be no ability to access for emergency vehicles or trash pickup vehicles. So the land mass that was rightfully so platted by the city planning to have 8 homes, now they're proposing double that. And there's not enough land there to allow for either an access road or overflow parking on their land. And what we're saying is there has to be, because they can't park on Lily Court because, again, it would block access to our emergency vehicles. So the other and really big issue is the lack of traffic control on Alpine and Highway 66. We are also directly across Alpine from Prairie Village Villas, which are currently being built and will include 44 paired homes, which means 88 units. So we feel for all these reasons that it just is not a possible scenario. And we just are trying to find any way we can to be involved in the discussion around this because our developer is not sharing that with us. We'd also like access to any traffic control studies that have been done on Alpine in our area of Highway 66, because that would definitely affect the discussion around increasing, any increase of density that's already so dense in this area. So thanks so much for listening.
Thank you. All right, next caller.
All right. Caller ending in 722. 722. You should be able to unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, and then you have 5 minutes.
Hi, Mayor Bagley and City Council. My name is Lynette McLean, and I'm calling in to talk about the air quality issues, and I'd just like to ask a couple questions about what the City Council is planning to do about a couple things. One, I wondered if you were planning on developing some sort of an action plan in response to the Senate Bill 181. And then I wondered if, just like one of the other callers asked, if you had a plan to address the violations of the oil and gas companies that are currently poisoning our air. Residents can track the data on the website Boulder, BOULDAIR.com. And based on the data from Dr. Detlef on that site, the oil companies have been venting and polluting our air, and they have released 7 times the normal amount of methane, and also butane and benzene gases that are not safe at any level. And the data shows that a pattern of increased pollutants is occurring on most mornings, but the recent venting has been so high that it couldn't even be measured with the equipment at the monitoring station. And this type of air pollution can cause respiratory illness, cancer, and many other health issues, and it's especially harmful to children and vulnerable adults. And people can learn more about health effects of poor air quality at the Physicians for Social Responsibility website. That's psr.org, and they're studying this. The state regulations prohibit venting, and they also require oil companies to notify the government, notify local governments if they're doing anything that's going to cause pollution, or if they're going to prevent adverse environmental impacts on any air, water, soil, or biological resources resulting from their operations, and what they're going to do to protect and minimize the impacts. And I don't believe they're doing that, but I'd be interested to know if they have contacted you, or if I'd like to know if there's any information about what they have offered. The city of Longmont does have a vision to be 100% renewable by 2030, and I just believe that the fracking activities of our local gas and oil companies are not taking us in that direction. And I'm asking you please to work with other local entities and the state to stop this pollution that's affecting our health. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next caller.
All right, caller ending in 829. Caller ending in 829. You should be able to unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record. Caller 829, it's *6 to unmute yourself.
We're down to what, 6, 7?
Could this be 898 by any chance instead?
Nope, this is 829.
Okay. You can go ahead and mute me again. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, 829. Okay. 829, we'll come back to you. Let's move on to 904. Caller 9.
6 or 7 left?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like 10 even.
All right, I was just curious.
Yep. All right, caller 904. Looks like you were able to unmute yourself. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record, and then you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Judy Lubau, and I live at 106 Granada Court in Longmont. First, I wanted to thank the mayor and city council for your efforts in all your public service and also listening to the citizens. It's been very interesting and very long tonight, so I can only say kudos to you for this effort. What I'm concerned about tonight is air pollution, and several other callers have raised the same issue. It has to do with the flares that the data, the monitoring has shown recently, huge spikes for methane, about 7 times the normal amount, plus emissions of butane and benzene, which should not be emitted in the air at all. And I'm very concerned that that's happened, and that perhaps the state is not doing much, and I don't know if the city's doing much about it. But it's really a transgression, and it's not helping people with any kind of lung problems. So I would hope that the city is planning to do something and not treating business as usual, having flares that we've seen from last week. So I appreciate your attention to this matter. And again, thank you for your public service.
Thank you.
There is a
Councilmember
question.
Peck?
Please stay on the line.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I just wanted to reiterate that we're going to have a presentation, I think, on February 7th about the gas and oil. So and maybe some of your questions will be answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next question.
All right, our next caller, your phone number ends in 829. We're going to give you a try again. 829, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Caller 829. There you are. Nope.
It's
Sorry.
actually 898. So I didn't know if.
Sorry. Yeah.
Was
This is not the correct caller, ma'am. If you could give us just a minute. Your phone number ends in 798. So 829. If you can hear us, there's about a 20 to 30 second delay if you're watching the live stream. So go ahead and hit star 6, 829, caller 829. We're trying to unmute you. I will move on to the next caller, caller 336. 336. I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you are.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is Suju Verghese at 2405 Cali Drive, Unit I. First of all, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to raise our concerns. There are two topics that I kind of wanted to address. The first is I want to echo the concern from the first caller. I think the first past the post collection system that we have been using has caused a lot of damage nationally, especially in polarizing the country. So either a single transferable vote or a ranked choice voting system will give voters the chance to vote based on their preferred candidate rather than worrying about who's going to win an election. This might not seem like a big issue for Longmont, especially being a smaller city, but I think this sets up a good example for the whole of Colorado. Secondly, I want to voice my support for the initiative to install smart meters across the city. I think having smart meters gives us the data we need as homeowners to understand how we use our electricity and what are consuming power in our house. If we are to reach our goal of reducing our power usage, this is a critical piece of that information. And I know that some of our neighbors have raised concerns about the safety of the radiation. It is critical that any decisions are based on facts. We need to distinguish between ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. Having previously worked in electromagnetic compatibility lab or EMC lab, I can with great confidence say that the health risk associated with non-ionizing radiation is almost non-existent. Even at extremely high radiation level, it is essentially only causing heating. And even that is falling off as a function of 1/r². So essentially, the farther you get away from it, substantially faster that radiation levels falls off. There are some valid concerns about cost and privacy that have been raised, but we should let the decisions be dictated by facts and not by fear of ionizing radiation. And finally, one small anecdote that I wanted to share is that at my brother's house in Michigan, he recently had a smart meter installed. And the information that he got about what equipment was using what power was really valuable for him, just getting a sense of what is using power. And getting that information in the hands of homeowners is really going to help get the public educated. And education is going to lead to people choosing equipment that consumes less power. So again, thanks for the opportunity. And I'll keep it short.
All right, Councilor Martin.
Thank you for your call. I agree with what you said. I'd also like to reassure you that in 2018, when we first started talking about an AMI rollout, that I brought up the very points that you've been raising about privacy. And while we have not yet seen the final requirements for a smart meter proposal, I hope that that the encryption of the data transmission as well as the security of the meter data management system will be paramount, and that no data will come out that is not depersonalized.
Thank you, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, sir. All right, next caller.
Thank you. The next caller, your phone number is 533. I'm going to ask you to unmute. 533.
Yeah, hi, thank you. It's Matt Menza, 2235 Parkview in Longmont. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, great. Hey, I just wanted a couple comments. First, I was a little shocked that your resolution tonight was talking about denouncing the Capitol riot violence, which is, you know, certainly any right-minded person would disagree that any violence, especially on our Capitol, is atrocious. But I didn't hear you guys talking about anything related to small businesses or the schools and our children or mental health. So I guess with that said, it would be appropriate then if we look back over the year, and the insurance companies and the media just talked about the $2 billion in damage, over 100 people injured from the riots and looting, 95% linked to BLM and Antifa riots over the last year. So I think it'd be appropriate if the City Council also passed a resolution denouncing the BLM and Antifa riots that were absolutely not mostly peaceful, because it equated into $2 billion worth of damage, 150 innocent store owners hurt, killed, over 10 store owners damaged and murdered, and a lot of violence. So the statement by the local area Democrats that clearly misses the point or is delusional or kind of disturbing, that there's a lot of civil unrest going on in the country, and we need to be fair about, if we're going to be talking as a community about violence and uncivil behavior, then we need to be fair about it. Let's pass a resolution denouncing all the violence that we've seen over the last year as well. That would be appropriate and equivocal, and it would be it'd tell your voters out there that we're not just a crazy delusional city. We actually understand that there's multifaceted issues here that are hurting our minds. So let's be fair. Let's pass a resolution that denounces that violence too. On another topic, the park, I think there's a lot of people that saw what you did for the left-hand canyon or left-hand creek 100-meter long bike path that you published as unlawful and illegal activity. That was disturbing to a lot of the your constituents and voters that think that your focus and your behavior is actually kind of absurd, because the people who live here and are smart, understand environmental concerns, and understand that you ripped up 50 trees just to widen Pike Avenue, and you're concerned about children playing in the tree lines. Calling that unlawful and illegal and environmentally dangerous is absolutely absurd. So I'm really appalled at what you're doing, actually. There's a lot of people that don't support you, and I think that the council needs to be turned over as quickly as possible, because you don't support the children. You use strong language like illegal activity for children riding a bike in a 100-meter space, and I guarantee a park that we use all the time. And and I live here. My kids ride there all the time, and it's great. I ride with them, and there's nothing that I would support in terms of hurting the environment. And it's actually a very nice place for kids to get away and enjoy themselves. And you guys took it away. So I think that's unfortunate. I think that says a lot about the leadership. And I pray that the folks here in Longmont wake up and make some changes politically, because I think we need it. We need better leadership. And instead of passing resolutions about the Capitol, which we all do, but we all know that it's a narrative spoken by mainstream media, we need to focus on Longmont and what we need here. And we need to stop being the fun sponges. We need to start taking care of our kids and our parks and looking at solutions other than just taking down biking trails. So thank you. And I do hope that you all have a good year and continue to serve well for Longmont and make better decisions. Thank you very much.
We've got a couple hands up if you want to stick around.
Sure.
I'm going to take mayor's prerogative. I usually don't go first. I always go last, but I'd like to just chime in.
Do you want me to star six this to mute it? How do you want me to do this?
No, no need to mute. No need to mute. But I just wanted to let you know. So I believe I'm the only non-Democrat on council, and so maybe that lends a little extra weight. But here's the reason why I voted for the resolution tonight, and that is, this is way different than the BLM or Antifa protests. This is not left versus right. This is not about violence. This was a day when our country, beginning in 1776, when this all started, our government was established so that at the time 13, but now it's 50 different governments come together to choose a collective president. This day, although ceremonial, is the day that legally and constitutionally is what determines who will be our next president. And having someone, whether it's the president or whoever, basically call and incite people, not necessarily, okay, you can say it wasn't violent, you can choose word choice, but encouraging people to go to the Capitol to put pressure on Congress to interfere in that election was wholly inappropriate. Wholly. Entering that Capitol building, the United States representative government of me and this municipality and all other municipalities, was highly not only inappropriate, it was illegal, it was wrong. It puts in danger 250 years of our country passing from one president to the next. The appropriate venue is the voting booth in 2024. It's not taking and storming the Capitol building to scream and yell and kill and damage. So go ahead.
I don't disagree with your, with your condemnation of what happened. I don't believe that was appropriate at all either. But we've got to be fair about what's happening. We spend $750 billion a year on defense, and you're telling me in less than an hour, 200 idiots breached the Capitol? I mean, this is not a fair representation of what's happening in America. And I don't see Longmont denouncing the fact that we've had $2 billion of damage and serious threats against innocent people throughout the country from were not mostly peaceful riots. And I want to see that as a major issue too, because that's a very serious issue where a lot of people are afraid to go into big cities now. They're afraid to go downtown. They're afraid to go anywhere in Denver because of the Antifa and the riots and the homeless and all these other things that are becoming very violent and very, very critical to the safety of our people. And so, yes, what happened, but remember, you had 500,000 plus people in Washington, D.C. on 6 January, and you had a couple hundred idiots that acted like animals, and they're all going to get their due process. But I want to see fairness from what you guys are doing and saying in terms of your narrative that better represents the thoughts and feelings of your constituents in this community.
Well, and I hear what you're saying. I don't think this council is for violence, but everything you just mentioned happens outside Longmont. What happened on the 6th impacted Longmont. It put at risk our republic.
No, it didn't.
Sure it did. Sure it did. What would have happened? I mean, come on, man. I mean, I'm with you. I vote R typically. I'm with you. But in this particular case, when someone loses an election, you don't do that. These 200 people don't storm the building. I mean, I'm sorry, but they were Trump supporters. I mean, they weren't Antifa. They weren't BLM.
Negative. 232, Brian, 232 people were arrested for those riots that were linked to Antifa and BLM. So come on, you guys, come on. Nobody agreed with the violence. I certainly didn't agree with it, but I just think you guys are barking up a very, very radical narrative, and I think it's unfortunate.
Well, if basically speaking out vehemently as a mayor to say, do not interrupt the Electoral College when they're picking a new president, call me a radical.
I think that's fine. But I want to see you denounce the other violence that has occurred for the last year, actually, quite frankly.
Of course, I and this council denounce it, but we're not going to take a resolution on everything. This was an important one. All right, Dr. Waters.
Yeah, it's just for your reference, just to remind you and for the caller, we did pass a resolution denouncing the violence associated with peaceful demonstrations. We denounced all violence associated with those. And Mr. Mendez, you might want to go back. My notes don't go back to the June meetings, but I believe it was in a June meeting that we adopted a resolution doing exactly that. So when you referenced fairness and balance, so in fairness, you might want to go back and read all that we've done, number one. Number two, I'm curious with your criticism of our unwillingness to support children. I wonder how much you know about what we've done with our early childhood initiative that supports not only young children and their families, but our business community and their employees. healthcare providers, Main Street businesses. I wonder what you know about our 529 JUMP program that invests in every kindergarten, not just in Longmont. No, I've got the floor now, sir. I got the floor just for a minute.
Hold on one second. Well, Mr. Mendez, we'll let you talk in just a second. This will be a good back and forth.
Sure it will. That's why we do this. So we all get smarter about the issues. And one of them is the investment we're making in every kindergarten, or just in not just in Longmont, but in the entire school district, to signal to them the confidence we have in their potential and in reasons, evidence-based reasons for investing in their college investment portfolios or funds. So we may not be doing enough, and you may clearly don't like what we decided in terms of the bike path, right, on Left Hand Creek. But to suggest we've done nothing for children is simply a lack of information, I suppose, and to suggest that we haven't condemned other violence is also a lack of information. So those are, things we've done you might want to learn something about.
Well, I think, first of all, I think if you're doing things for children in our community, then let's do a better job at selling it, meaning let's let people know more about that. Let's focus more on Longmont issues than national issues here in Longmont. So that's good. If in June you denounced the violence that was occurring in the country, great. I haven't seen it. Again, it goes back to you and the council selling your stuff. And I pay attention, and I guess I missed it in June. So if you did, great. That's absolutely fabulous, and that's the right thing to do. It shows responsible and equitable, perspective on all the issues.
Yeah, Mayor Bagley, might I make one more comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I understand the idea of selling what we've done, but there's a point in time, Mr. Mendez, where you have a responsibility to pay attention to what we're doing.
Oh, trust me, I pay attention.
We do it in public.
I have
we
emails
do it in
from
public
all
on
of you.
Tuesday. We
I
do
have
it in public on
wonderful
Tuesday
emails
nights.
From a lot of you, like Marcia Martin telling us that we don't know how to think. The public doesn't know how to think. We need to be told what to do by government. I have all those. I've been paying attention. If I missed one of your resolutions, then you win that one. And I appreciate you speaking out against violence. Thank you.
It's not a competition. I'm not trying to one up. I'm just saying we do what we do in public. We're on the record every Tuesday night. It's your town hall. There's no hiding behind that. It's as transparent as it can be, but it's your job to pay attention to what we're doing.
You'll be bored.
I think I'm doing that. Thank you for the lecture, Dad. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Councilmember Christensen?
If you're still on the line, this isn't really about politics. As Mayor Bagley said, this is about, you are equating people who marched this summer and for the last year to redress and to draw attention to the fact that for 400 years, Black people in this country have been treated worse than dogs. And they are finally tired of it. That is a very different situation from people who are flying in on jets to stay in 4-star hotels and then marching in the streets. And some of the members, not most of the members, there were thousands of people there. But when people are illegally going into the Capitol to overthrow the results of 80 million voters in this country, to overthrow our government, essentially, threatening to murder members of our government, that's a very different thing. They are not the same. So this isn't about politics or, one side balancing the other. This is about insurrection, and it's wrong, as the mayor said. And I appreciated everything that the mayor said. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Hidalgo-Fahring. Mr. Mendez, I will admit you have hit upon the topic that has woken up council tonight. This is a good forum now. All right, Councilmember Hidalgo-Fahring.
Well, and I think it's too important to clarify our rationale for doing this. I'm a public school teacher. I have children at home. I have a child with a disability. I will do everything and anything in my power to support initiatives that support children. The issue, and so one thing I want to add to what Dr. Waters had said about all the work that the council and the city has done for children, the other one was Nextlight. When we went to online learning, I only had 3 kids in my classroom who had access to internet. So I had to connect the other 20 to find them internet. And next light, our city came through. And it was because of this council before you and the city staff that worked diligently, and we prioritized to ensure that kids have what they need so they can be successful, so they can have those issues. And then a point just for clarification too, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, who is their national organization that does just data research, one of the things is when they looked at all the protests, racial justice protests that occurred from the George Floyd murder on, 93% of them were peaceful protests. I have engaged in those peaceful protests with my educational colleagues because we have students of color in our classrooms. I've dealt with racism my life. I've been in places where they were wetback, go back to Mexico, you don't belong here. Okay, I've dealt with that all my life. There's a big difference between what happened at the Capitol and what happened with these, with the protests, with the Black Lives Matter protests. And I think Councilmember Christensen hit the nail on the head. 400 years of oppression in argument to, or comparing to a potential overthrow of our government. Those are 2 different issues. And we did write up in the resolution, and I know because I wrote it, denouncing the riots and the violence. That is not how we get things done. So thank you for your call.
All right, that was a good one. That was a good one. All right, next, we're what, 7, 6?
1 minute. We have 7 more.
All right, let's keep going.
The next caller, your phone number ends in 798. I'm going to ask you to unmute 798.
This is Virginia Farber from Fort Collins, Colorado.
Thank you. You may begin.
Okay, I'd like to address the City of Longmont and your smart meter program. I'm currently, I lost a son in 2008 who was a student on the SDSU campus, and there was a cell tower involved, which actually caused a brain cancer cluster of people on campus. This one cell tower could transmit 200 miles east-west and 100 miles north-south. That's one cell tower. But anyway, this cell tower is called Heparin. It's a high-performance wireless research and educational network. And what it is mission control for San Diego Gas and Electric, among many, many other government agencies. But anyway, I'm in the film called Take Back Your Power. And I'm also currently involved in I'm a petitioner suing the FCC with some large law firms and the Children's Health Defense and the Environmental Health Trust. And there was a gentleman that called in that said this low frequency stuff is not harmful, and I adamantly disagree with him. Basically, ionizing radiation causes damage to your cells and your DNA immediately, and non-ionizing radiation, which is wireless, is cumulative. So the more that you receive, the more damage that will occur. And you can look up EHS symptoms, electrohypersensitivity symptoms, and these are very real and they are very familiar to me. Anyway, the city of Fort Collins estimated our smart grid, this was in 2009, at $350 million, and each smart meter was $322. And I consider this robbery since smart meters true costs are around $50 each. And in Fort Collins, the 2010 status report clearly stated that the smart grid and the meters were to cost residents nothing. Since the installation starting in 2012, we have had nothing but huge rate increases, one again this year. Smart meters are depreciated, meaning residents will never be done paying for these cheap plastic computer board digital meters. Fort Collins deployed smart meters in 2012, 2013, and since then, they've had to replace 30,000 of these meters in 2018. This also proves that smart meters have a lifespan of around 5 to 7 years. Analog meters last between 50 to 80 years, and there's nothing sustainable about the smart grid. Smart meters do cause fires. This has been confirmed to me by Poudre Valley Fire Department in Fort Collins. Residents are unaware that the utilities own the meters and the boxes, but they do not own the wiring in the walls of a building. The wiring will always be shown to be the cause of a smart meter fire, and homeowners and business owners are left with paying for the damages. These fires are known to spread directly to the roof of a building, leaving unaware residents of damage, harm, or even death. Smart meters emit pulsed radiation, wireless radiation, per the 2018 NTP National Toxicology Program study showing clear evidence of harm. Wireless can now be classified as a Class 1 carcinogen, the same as benzene and asbestos. And Lloyd's of London and RE Swiss are both underwriters for insurance companies. They have never, nor will they ever, insure the wireless industry. The utilities own, maintain, and operate their equipment, and smart meters are their equipment. Homeowners are paying approximately $110 per year for the 24/7, 365 data transmissions. This should be paid by the utilities, not the homeowners and business owners. The smart grid and smart meters are riddled with fraud upon the American public. You now have the knowledge of the health effects, costs, and fires. There are now major lawsuits against the FCC suing over health effects and the science proving harm. And I also wanted to mention that smart meters are not good for the environment whatsoever. This is not sustainable, and this is harming our environment. It's harming every living organism. It's harming our trees, our bees, our kids, our homes, and this is pulsed radiation, and it's a constant pulse radiation. And I'm asking you, the City Council and the Mayor, to do your due diligence in your decisions, and please put a moratorium on these meters.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, next caller.
Next caller, I'm going to go back to 829. Let's try that one more time. 829, I'm going to ask you to unmute. (829), can you hit *6 on your phone if you hear me? Caller 829. Okay, not seeing any action there. I'm going to go on to the next caller. Caller 332, I'm going to ask you to unmute. 332. There you are.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Seth Miller. I live at 1025 Neon Forest Circle in Prospect, and I'm with you to talk to you about green energy and economics. To start, I'd like to commend Longmont for its recent work to evaluate the installation of solar in parking lots and on the rooftops of its properties throughout the city. The quoted prices have turned out to be unbelievably low, several at about $1 per watt, which is less than half of what they would have cost 4 years ago. I'm speaking out now to encourage the city to expand more aggressively into these distributed energy resources to lower both our carbon footprint and the cost of our electricity. Now, it's become almost trite in the world of energy to point out that renewables are now cheaper than fossil fuels. Extracting resources from the sky is free, whereas extracting them from the ground requires diggers and haulers and miles of train cars for transport. Generating energy from the sky is clean, whereas burning coal and gas is hot and suffocating and dangerous. In a world run by fossil fuels, it made sense to generate power in a central location far from the city. But with solar energy, we no longer need to separate generation from the people. The technology to locally generate and store electricity has over the last few years become cheap enough to be competitive, and we should invest in it. Consider how we could benefit from solar's less sexy partner in green energy, lithium batteries. Longmont pays PRPA, the Platte River Power Authority, a fee called a demand charge to compensate for the cost of meeting our peak generation and transmission needs. In fact, about 40% of the city's bill to PRPA is for these demand charges rather than for the electricity itself. And so we can save a significant amount of money simply by smoothing out our consumption, storing renewable energy in lithium batteries during times of peak supply, and releasing it again at times of peak demand. We drop our peak consumption and we drop our demand charges, leaving more money in the pockets of every ratepayer in the city. Now, as a Longmont resident who works in the energy storage industry, I want to spread the word that a small-scale storage project, roughly the size of the solar projects that we've studied, should pay for itself in less than 3 years. Now, a 3-year payback is almost unheard of in the energy industry, but that's how much pricing has changed recently. Just like solar, the economics of storage have shifted, and we can lower the electricity bills for the entire community if we take advantage of this. So how would we do it? I'm a consultant, so of course I believe the first step is to create a detailed long-term plan. In 2019, we amended our contract with PRPA to allow us to locally generate resources, but we haven't thought deeply about the opportunity this gives us. It's now time. By studying, we can learn quickly how much solar and batteries our distribution system can tolerate, and we can identify what savings we can reap. And beyond this immediate financial impact, a study of distributed energy can consider 2 other benefits to the community. The first is jobs. Every megawatt we bring to the local grid should add 8 local construction and maintenance jobs. A city the size of Longmont should have the capacity to integrate tens of megawatts of solar at lower costs than the energy transmitted from PRPA, and thereby create hundreds of well-paid local jobs. The second is, of course, a greener planet. Incentives to install home solar sound like they'll only benefit the sensibilities of a Tesla-driving upper-middle-class homeowner, but with a proper integration plan, they'll actually help every ratepayer in the city, because green is the new cheap. The cost to create a master plan for distributed energy would be a rounding error relative to the investment it recommends, paid for almost immediately by the first project. We've had the power to act on this since 2019, but now, with costs where there are today, there's no further reason for delay. If we start now, by the end of 2022, Longmont could extend its local power generation to create jobs and money literally from thin air. So on behalf of every resident of Longmont, I'd like to urge you that it's time to act. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, you got a thumbs up from Councilmember Peck. So let the record reflect. And Councilmember Martin. Anybody? And Councilmember Christensen, and Dr. Waters, and Councilmember Hidalgo-Fahring. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez is stone cold and just looking. All right, so let's go ahead and do the next caller.
All right. Caller 528. 528. You should be able to unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Anita Lee, and I live on Conifer Court in Boulder. Thank you for hosting this open forum. I want to speak to you about the value of critical thinking and how the censorship of doctors and scientists harms public policy, specifically regarding COVID and the lockdowns. Since April, I've been learning from scientists who present views of COVID that contradict the official narrative. These experts are from the United States, Germany, Ireland, Britain, the Netherlands, Sweden. They are doctors, virologists, immunologists, and epidemiologists. I never hear them on NPR, the BBC, or CNN, and they are censored on YouTube. Why are scientists being censored? Science requires debate. Different voices must be heard in order to arrive at the truth.
But with COVID, only one narrow stream of opinion is allowed, and others are censored. It is up to you as public servants to investigate and think it through. You are responsible to think it through, and you are capable. You can be heroes. You can examine evidence, and you can reduce fear with facts. I will give 2 examples, and I will send you some links to back these up. 1, in March of 2020, the CDC issued new rules for how to write death certificates. The new rules apply only to COVID cases, and they inflate the COVID fatality rate. Statisticians have examined the data. If hospitals were using the normal time-tested procedures for death certificates, the COVID death rate would be 90% lower than what we have been told. Why does COVID have unique rules for death certificates? Please think about that. I'll send you some information. Number 2, early treatment options have been proven to keep mild cases of COVID from escalating, but they are being thwarted by the CDC and the NIH. Dr. Pierre Corey's Senate testimony on December 8th described the research showing doctors' success using ivermectin to treat COVID. It saves lives, but the NIH has been dragging its feet on approving it for widespread use. I will send you some information about that. I believe that if you study this, you can be less afraid yourself, and you can help others to be less afraid. Finally, the cure must not be worse than the disease. Restrictions on small businesses are destroying the economic independence of many people. There is a tent village in Boulder along Boulder Creek. Would those folks be living outside if the economy was where it was a year ago? The cure must not be worse than the disease. Perhaps you think you are following the science when you follow the advice of the public health officials, but I say that science requires debate, and the debate on COVID is very lively all around the world. Censorship does not erase truth. It just makes it harder to find. As public servants, you must not blindly follow the dictates of unelected bureaucrats. You have a moral responsibility to engage in critical thinking and use a multivariant analysis as you make policy that affects us. I will send you information to help you with that, and I thank you for your time.
Well, Mayor, it looks like a few council members here have their hands raised.
Yeah, I said Councilmember Peck.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not hear you. Thank you. So Anita, thank you for this information, but I do have a question for you. You say that our death statistics are being are not right. They're untrue in the United States. But what about the statistics in the other parts of the world? Do you think CDC is squashing those as well, or inventing numbers that are not correct? Because we are not just looking at the United States. We are not just taking information from the United States, but from the World Health Organization. So when different reasonings, I guess, come out about our statistics, I'm always curious as to whether we are talking about just us or the World Health. Can you answer that, please?
Well, I have not looked at how death certificates are written in other countries. I do find it shocking that the CDC invented special rules for COVID in the United States, and I think it's alarming. And no, I don't know about death certificates in other countries.
And where did you get the information that CDC has written different rules?
Initially from the CDC website, and more recently from documents relating to a lawsuit in Ohio.
Okay. Can you?
And I will send that to you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. Councilmember Martin?
Thank you. Are you aware of a statistic known as excess deaths?
Yes.
So how do you account for the fact that if COVID deaths are being overreported, that the number of excess deaths this year as opposed to last year is consistent with the number of reported COVID deaths?
Well, I read a study from someone at Johns Hopkins who said the exact opposite.
I beg your pardon?
She said that she read it something published by John Hopkins. It was the exact opposite.
Yes, I understood that what she said. I'm not sure what that means. You are saying that John Hopkins says the excess deaths are inconsistent with the reporting?
I'm saying that, well, first of all, it wasn't the entire university. It was one person, one economist. And she said that she does not see excess deaths.
Yeah, I question that, but okay.
All right, Councilmember Christensen?
Could you give us the name of that person? Because an economist isn't really much of an expert on public health. But...
Well, I mean, she is an expert on statistics.
Okay. Well,
I don't have the name off the top of my head, but I have the article on my computer.
Okay. Well, yes, you could forward that to us. That would be interesting.
Sure.
Are you talking about the way that COVID is, when COVID is what primarily kills people, but there are comorbidities? Are you saying that it's actually the comorbidities that killed someone, not COVID? I mean,
right. Even the CDC has said that 94% of COVID deaths had serious comorbidities. And the old way death certificates were written was there's a primary cause of death, and then in section 2 of the death certificate, other factors are listed. Or, but for COVID, there's a different form of death certificate. So now with COVID, even suspected COVID, it can be listed as the cause of death, even if the person was not tested. And that's the CDC rule.
Well, most people were not tested. I, for instance, had COVID, but my doctor wouldn't allow me to be tested because at that time in March, only people who were medical people were allowed to be tested because there weren't enough tests. I would say that the actual number of COVID cases and COVID deaths in the United States were considerably higher than anything we are seeing. And we will never know because it was handled so really abysmally badly. But
don't you think it's odd that there would be different rules for death certificates for one condition?
Well, I'll have to look up at what the CDC says about that. But anyway, I thank you for calling in. I am a big advocate of critical thinking, which was removed from our state colleges as a requirement for graduation by the Republican Party when they were in power. I was working at the University of Colorado, and I was rather astonished to see critical thinking removed as one of the, which is really the main thing that you learn at a university. So we do all need to be doing more critical thinking. So thanks for calling in and reminding us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next caller.
All right, caller ending in 635. 635, you should be able to unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes.
My name is Shaquille Dalal. My address is 609 Terry Street. I'm calling because I'm concerned about the mode and pace of new construction in the city of Longmont. Like many members of the city council, I'm very concerned about environmental sustainability, financial sustainability for the city,
and the growth of Longmont in terms of both new people moving here and new construction in the city. I think one manifestation of these issues is in the financial sustainability of the construction of certain types of housing and retail stores in Longmont. My understanding is that when a new subdivision is built, once all the plots are sold and the homes built, eventually the city of Longmont assumes responsibility for the maintenance of the infrastructure supporting those homes. That means the roads in the neighborhood, the sewers that are underground, electrical distribution lines, fire protection and public safety, and of course many other things that I don't even know about. My concern is about the value of those properties, the tax revenue they generate for the city, and in comparison, the amortized cost of the infrastructure, which will eventually be borne by the city. If sewer lines need to be replaced every 20 years, but the tax base of that development doesn't generate enough revenue, the replacement of those sewer lines will wind up being subsidized by the city. What that means is that people and properties that are more in keeping with Longmont's historical development pattern will wind up subsidizing new, unsustainable development. A simple remedy to this problem would be to require, as part of a development application, a calculation of the projected tax revenue generated by the development compared to the cost of the infrastructure replacement. If when a development is built, we know in advance that we'll have to replace the streets in 10 years, the sewers in 20 years, and the electrical distribution lines in 30 years, I think the city should know in advance that the development makes economic sense, not just for the property owners, but for everyone in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaquille. Yeah, you expressed the same concerns I think that we all have. And so it's a fine line to walk between development at a pace that will allow us to keep housing affordable, but not ruin what we all agree is a small town feel. So, all right, next caller.
All right, caller 084. Caller 084.
Hello.
Hello, you can state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. This is David Goldberg, 200 East 23rd Street in Loveland. I wanted to thank Mayor Bagley and all the council members who I sincerely believe are trying to keep an open mind towards the proposed rollout of smart meters in Longmont, which I oppose. I had hoped to have a slice of an award-winning documentary, which actually Virginia, who was on the call, a couple of callers back, referenced, and she's in that video, or some slides which actually showed physiological effects of microwave radiation on the human body. Now, I know you have heard multiple times from callers calling in about health effects of radio frequency radiation, including from smart meters. This actual excerpt was taken and experiment performed by Dr. Frank Springbob, a chiropractic physician, using a technique called dark field microscopy to actually study the effect on red blood cells in the human body when exposed to smart meters. And what he did was take 3 subjects, measure their blood, and then expose them both to analog meters and to smart meters. I would have loved to show you again what it looks like, but I'll describe it to you. I'm looking at it right now. So first he took the sample of regular healthy red blood cells in all 3 of the subjects, and they're beautifully round formed, spread out, shaped, and there's no inconsistencies or damage to any of the cells. Then what he did was took the 3 subjects, put them one foot away from an analog meter for 2 minutes, retook their blood results and studied those, and the cells looked exactly like the control group, where there was no damage at all to the cells. They were spread out and free flowing. He then exposed them to all 3 subjects to smart meter radiation for 2 minutes apiece, 1 foot away from the smart meter. And what you can see, and it's striking, is damaged cells that are inconsistently shaped, serrated edges, and the cells are actually clotting together and unable to move like the non-smart meter radiated cells. So what he concluded from this was that the harm of this is that these red blood cells were then unable to, in this state where they're misformed and unable to flow freely, they are unable to carry oxygen to all the parts of the body where they are needed, and lack of oxygen to parts of the body can cause many of the diseases we know today, including cancer and all kinds of disease. So I wish you could see that, and I really recommend highly that each of you see the full video. It's called Take Back Your Power, an award-winning documentary, very powerful. You'll learn a lot to make any decision about smart meters. You're probably thinking, from the people like me who are calling in, we're either a bunch of nuts, which we're not, or that maybe we have something here, that maybe there is some danger about the smart meters, but that the technology rollout is inevitable. The smart grid and all of technology, there's nothing we can do. And what I say to that are 3 words: no, no, no. Myself, I'm big into technology, as are most of us, but the inevitability of technology, while I think technology itself is inevitable, technology needs to be safe, and unsafe technologies have to be stopped at any cost. I think the cities of Longmont and Loveland are absolutely heroic in their willingness to take on a fiber optic network, which only a handful of municipalities around the country have had the guts to do. So you are providing leadership in that way, and I urge you, City of Longmont, to continue that leadership. Don't accept anything but smart technologies. It's going to take cities like you and individuals to stand up and say, no, we're going to demand safe technology, or we're just not going to accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Councilmember Martin.
Yes, sir. I watched that video this afternoon, and I have a couple of questions about the sampling process used. First of all, how does your chiropractor account for the fact that he had 3 subjects and 3 distinct and different forms of cell deterioration observed?
Well, I don't know how good I can. I'm not a scientist, or I'm not a doctor. I think it's pretty common knowledge that the human body, everybody reacts differently to all kinds of stimulus. So the fact that there would be some slight differences, and yes, I'm looking at them too. In fact, you saw the 3rd subject only lasted 45 seconds and then got a blinding headache. But I think it's natural that different subjects just present differently, and that trying to get uniformity is probably never going to happen if you're trying to prove something. That's the best I can say.
Do you happen to know whether the blood samples were drawn, before and after blood samples were drawn from the same site?
The same location?
Yes.
My understanding of when I saw on that video was it was all done at the same time and in the same location.
Okay, so you have not read the backing paper?
I have not read the backing paper, no.
Okay, I'll read the backing paper. So I can't talk further right now, but I'll make it my business to do so.
As will I.
All right, thank you. All right, next caller. We have what, 2 more?
I believe so, yes. So this would be caller 126. Caller 126, you should be able to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 126. It's *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record, and then you have 5 minutes.
Excellent. Hello, my name is Ina Zadrovic. I live at 352 Baker Street. Thanks so much to the mayor and council for being here so late tonight. I'm calling to express my concern about the Atwood residential project that's proposed at 300 Atwood. As my neighbor already expressed, there are definitely concerns in the neighborhood with parking and just an overflow of people. The way that the proposal reads currently states that there's supposed to be 64 additional units, which would roughly double the density, if not quadruple. I mean, it kind of, I don't know exactly how many people live on this block, but I can kind of guess the existing square block, which is substantial, particularly in a historic neighborhood that just doesn't have sufficient parking as it is. Most of the homes here don't have driveways, don't have garages. We all rely on street parking and are already navigating and negotiating that. Now, I understand that there is supposedly going to be a deed restriction in place to limit one vehicle per residence, and I guess I'm curious as to how that would be enforced after these units are sold off, in the event that someone who owned a unit chose to purchase another vehicle or had a housemate or a partner who had an additional vehicle. So that seems to be a little bit of a loose thread to me. So I was also concerned about sufficient recreation areas for residents in the development and their children and pets. The proposed development would happen like right on the train tracks and an alley and 3rd Avenue. So there's, when you look at the proposal, there's just not a lot of space there. This is 64 residences that are proposed to go in. I already mentioned the dramatic population increase, and then just reliable and safe street access to the proposed development in terms of there's like a one-way alley, a road, Atwood, which is cut down the middle by a train, and then a 4-lane road on 3rd. So I'm just curious as to how these folks would have sufficient access to their building, in addition to the safety concerns that another East Side resident already shared this evening around the proposed blockages of either the 4th Avenue at Atwood, east-west access, or 5th Avenue. So there's just a lot of issues with this whole proposal. What I've been told by planning is that because this is an affordable housing proposal, there's actually no way for us to even comment on it, which is why we're all calling you. So I'm also just kind of, on another level, deeply concerned with that part of the process. Now, of course, we all understand this is affordable housing. We absolutely support that. It's just the size and the scope of this seems to be unsustainable to me as someone who lives here, and I'm concerned that there are like builders and developers who are financially incentivized to build these buildings. And yeah, I'm sure they're great folks and they want to, promote the city's envision plan. And at the same time, this process is effectively disenfranchising the people who actually live here and have a real stake in the community. So I wanted to share that with you, and I'm open to talking more if you have any questions or comments for me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. All right, last caller.
All right, our last caller is back to 829. We are back to caller 829. Are you able to unmute yourself? *6 to unmute. Caller 829. All right, well, I've just prompted them to unmute from our admin panel here. And it looks like they just hung up. So that is all of our callers.
All right, we've all had a chance to say things tonight. Do we have any mayor council comments? Dr. Waters.
A quick question, Eugene, are you still on the line?
Still here.
With the comments we heard tonight about, I mean, everybody's concerned about the flares and the spike in contaminants in the air. What are our parameters in terms of our legal parameters for dealing with the causes, the perpetrators? That's coming from, I assume, wells east of us, but not necessarily. Could come from a variety of directions. What are our options with respect to holding them accountable?
Currently now, we have limited regulations, I think, on the air quality. We were just starting conversations with staff to look at potential regulations. I have to say that project hasn't been at the top of our list, but we can certainly move it up. I think we can present information on February 9th and get direction from council at that time.
Are there some legal options that we have for operators that are flaring but they're doing it outside of our city limits?
Currently I think the COGCC is the primary regulatory agency. I didn't realize these were outside the city boundaries.
That's my assumption. We don't have any of that going on inside the city limits, do we?
We do have some active wells. I'm not sure exactly where the source of the emissions were, but most of them are outside the city. So we would have limited regulatory authority over operations outside the city limits.
All right. Well, I'll wait for the presentation. I just didn't, I didn't know how aggressively we should be thinking about legal options, and maybe there are alternatives other than legal options.
Councilor Christensen.
As a follow-up to Dr. Waters, to Eugene, isn't when we have reported this, as Dale Rademacher said, we've reported this and we have not heard back from them. Are they not required to get back to us? I mean, within a certain amount of time?
My office has not looked into this as in terms of division. This seems to be an operational issue for the city, and there are city staff. We had not been asked to look at requirements on reporting. We're happy to do that if that's a concern of staff or councils, but we just haven't done that to date.
Yes, it's a concern.
We'll go with Aren. Mayor Pro Tem, you haven't said much tonight. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Sorry, I would not unmute for some reason. Anyway, first of all, I just want to thank everybody that called in tonight for all of your opinions and information that I think will, to some extent, will shape the rest of the agenda for, I would say, this council before the upcoming elections happen in November. I do want to say the one thing that struck me about some of the correspondence I received, as well as some of the calls, related to the statement that the council decided to endorse unanimously tonight, that a lot of it was solely focused on a concept that we were rebuking President Trump. I do not believe, I believe there's a portion of the statement that deals with the Capitol riots, but I felt like the overarching message in the statement was about the need for civility when we speak to others that do not agree with us ideologically. I thought that was a very important piece of the statement and why I definitely agreed to it, because I don't think we're necessarily going to get to a point where we're going to absolutely agree with each other, but I hope we get to the point where we can stop calling each other names and maybe on certain cases agree to disagree, but at the same time be able to have that civil discussion and also live with each other as our neighbors here in the city of Longmont. And I felt that was more important in the message that Dr. Waters helped author or authored, and that the council agreed with. And I just would hope that people take a deeper delve into reading that text to see that it is not specifically, in my opinion, a rebuke of the administration, more so as a call to civility and being neighbors and knowing that we're fellow Americans and that we all want what's best, even if we don't agree what's best in getting there. So I just would suggest that folks take a look at that statement a little more closely and not just read what's in the newspapers about it. Outside of that, it was an interesting public forum compared to, an in-person one. I hope we get to in-person public forums again soon. I'm not confident we'll do that in June or July, as we heard there's some delay in the vaccine distribution earlier on today or this evening, as well as knowing that the state's doing a great job, all things considered, with what they have available to them. As such, thank you again to everyone that called in tonight, and also thanks to the council members for all your work, even if I disagree with you sometimes. So.
All right, thank you. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem about finding everything that's important in that statement. I think it was quite profound, and while I don't know how anyone would fail to rebuke the president personally, that wasn't the big deal. The big deal is that we have a country to hold together. We have a country to put back together. And, I think that should be something that we all can agree on. But getting back down to specifics of the oil and gas event that we're all concerned about right now, we spent a fair amount of money on Dr. Helmig's monitoring technology. And yeah, we have a website that we can look at and see what's going on. And that's all great. And I advocate for that. And I think that, we're cities all up and down the Front Range are trying to emulate that. Some already have, and it's a good thing. But the great thing will be when we use that data to stop things like this from happening. The COGCC and the Air Quality Commission, not a good acronym, woman, but anyway, those people that are following the new rules that are being slowly squeezed out of the COGCC, have a rulemaking about something called cumulative effects. And it is supposed to provide the mechanism for an impacted government to reach out to something or to cause the state to enforce the rules against an emitter that is not in the local government's jurisdiction. I am not clear because, again, it's been coming out slowly and it's kind of not my job to follow them step by step. But at some point, we will have a cumulative effects ruling that we should be able to use to take action based on the data that we're collecting. So, I think what I want to say is that it definitely should be on both our legal and operational radar screens. And if we need a council resolution about that to be in effect now, then I'm pretty sure that we can arrange that coming up real soon. Because it's not going to be immediate work that anybody has to do. It's just adding that to our radar screen. I know we already have a very talented young engineer who is doing the monitoring and will know just what to do. We just need to make sure it's her job.
All right, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I want to thank the public for all of their input, all of their questions, and contributing to our democracy, because this is the most fun part of being on council, as far as I'm concerned, engaging actually on a one-on-one basis with the public and hearing your concerns. I do think, going back to the gas and oil, I thank everybody for your comments. I do think that we don't have to wait for a resolution. We can do things to educate staff or educate ourselves and staff as far as looking at what control do we have over our air quality. If not the specific operators, is there anything on the books now that we can enforce or at least bring to the attention of the state legislators? And I don't think that that is council's job or role, according to my previous conversations with staff, to address the state legislature on gas and oil operations or their effects. But that is public knowledge. So the more people become engaged, the more the environmentalists and the climate control organizations become engaged and know what's happening and contact the legislation and COGCC, we can move this further and faster. So that's what I hope that we come to, that everybody uses this data, not just the city council's job to use the data. It's out there for everybody. So I thank you for that. I also, unless someone else on this council, I wanted to make just a statement about where we are with RTD. Were you going to say something, Mayor Bagley? Or
I was going to actually mention it, but you can go ahead if you'd like, Councilmember Peck. I know what you're going to say.
I just want to say that there have been some public comments made by our new executive director at RTD that basically has put us in, as far as the Northwest Corridor, not just us, but the other 4 unfinished corridors with fast tracks on the back burner, way back on the burner. So I'm incredibly disappointed with those statements. And I did have a meeting yesterday with the chair of NADA and the mayor of Louisville and myself to address what do we want to do with this? And we came up with and I did text Mayor Bagley about our meeting as well, as called Phil Greenwald. We have decided that we are going to demand basically that these corridors, for all the reasons that have been stated for years, are on a priority list to finish. And if not, we want our money back and we want to get out of the fast tracks plan. And that is where we're going with it. I think Mayor Bagley will address that as well. But we're bringing it up with Dr. Koch at tomorrow night's meeting, at the NADA SPC meeting Thursday, and then the full NADA board meeting next Friday. And I think that the communities will be all in alignment with this. And I don't expect RTD to do anything because they don't. But we do have another option in putting all of our support behind Amtrak and Front Range Passenger Rail. This is an opportunity with our new president-elect, with our governor, with the new transportation funding that is coming out. So that is where the 3 of us decided that we are going to try to focus our efforts, but tell RTD we're done playing games. So I just wanted to put that out there so that it's transparent of what we're working on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Councilmember Peck. So yeah, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, Ashley, the mayor of Louisville, and I, along with the other mayors of Boulder County, will be meeting via Zoom for our mayors and commissioners committee meeting. And the executive director of RTD will be there. And what I plan on saying is that we have not voted as a council yet, but given the articles that I'm reading, what I personally planned on saying is saying, 1, are you willing to commit immediately to peak rail service, which is what our position has been. So will you commit immediately to that? And 2, will you do something to show progress? I will remind them that this council and the group sent me down with the mayor of Westminster to talk to BNSF. BNSF was more than willing to provide preliminary plans for coming up with a cost estimate, which the RTD board, as of today, has not taken advantage of. I don't like having my time wasted. I do not like having my city taken advantage of. I do not like this council being ignored. So if she is unwilling to commit to showing progress on the peak rail in a fairly short time frame, my personal position, and I'm going to advocate with this council and the other communities in Boulder County, is that we should no longer push for the train. What we should do is start saying, if you are no longer going to be providing a train and we are not participating in a manner as our voters approved, they're not allowed, 2004, they are not allowed to just say, we changed our mind. The money can be used elsewhere. They're not allowed to say, you know what? Well, you do participate in the district, so we're going to keep using. No, the 2004 ballot measure, which was passed, included the Northwest Rail. As such, my position is, A, give us our money back. In the event you don't give us our money back, at the very least, stop taking out the 40% of a penny for the fast tracks train. Let it go. And we will focus on Amtrak and the passenger rail that we're talking about from Pueblo to Cheyenne. And we'll go with that. We don't need RTD's fast track because as much as I like RTD, buses, trains, etc., currently what we're doing is paying for a train we're never going to get. And while I am all for regional transportation, worst case scenario, we can do it a lot cheaper, because we are paying a hell of a lot more for our bus service and especially our train than anyone else in the district. And so I want to hear what she says. And I cannot represent council. We're not taking a vote. But if I said anything that any council member would say, no, Brian, don't. All right, that's what I thought. So, all right, cool. Yes, Councilmember Christensen.
I want to thank Councilwoman Peck and Mayor Bagley for and also Phil Greenwald for their work on transportation. It's just, of course, we're all going to be transitioning to electric vehicles within the next decade, but that isn't nearly enough. We have to have mass transportation. And the idea that a transportation district does not understand or advocate anything for true rapid mass transit is incomprehensible to me. It is so ignorant and backward, and we are, the people of Longmont have borne the burden of this being denied access to better jobs, better transportation. It's very wrong. So yeah, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, and thank you very much, both of you.
Thanks, Paulie. All right, Dr. Waters.
I appreciate your leadership for both of you on these issues. So I'll echo what Councilmember Christensen just said. I'm just curious, Mayor Bagley. It's one thing to state your expectation, or Councilmember Joan Peck, Councilmember Peck. I'm sorry, it's late. To line up the municipalities in terms of a position. What are our real legal options? Would it take a class? Well, I don't know if it's class action. It's going to take a lawsuit, I would assume. And what kind of advice is anybody giving in terms of prospects of prevailing, either in stopping them from taking out the tax or pulling out of the district?
Really what we're doing is we'd be asking the directors to send a letter to the legislature saying, take Longmont out, take Louisville out, take the North.
So by statute.
Yeah, so
legislative action.
Yeah, so option A is, and it might need to be approved by the voters, but option A is, again, perform. Option 2 is get us out of fast tracks. Option 3 is get us out of the district. You know, there's been talk among the other mayors of that as well. And then now, as far as a lawsuit and forcing them to stop using our tax dollars, I know Eugene right now, he's not on the screen, but he's I know his stomach is nodding. I could make an argument both sides. I'm not an expert. I do not practice bus or train law, although train law would be fun. But I imagine that Eugene, will you be? Could you do some preliminary investigation into this, and so we can have actually Harold? Can we just put this on a future agenda and talk about our options legally, if any? Yep. I think that might be best. Is that okay, Eugene?
Can do, Mayor. We had direction to take a look at this, I don't know, a year and a half ago.
Right.
We thought that there was a different direction. We did do some initial research, talk to some of the city's special counsel. We can dust that off and bring it back.
Let's dust it off, because I think my gut is that this council will want to do something. So knowing kind of what we think and how we feel, maybe you could bring some options for us. Would that be okay? And we can talk. I saw that your vision gazed off the screen like, oh crap. Maybe we could talk further at length, but just kind of a heads up. Let's put something on the agenda here when you're within your time frame, given your workload.
Yeah, so just I'll make one last comment. If we're gonna make those utterances, and I think we should, but I'd like to know what we can actually follow through on, what those parameters are. So I appreciate this. So if we're gonna say it and people don't respond, then we ought to be able to do what we
right.
suggested we're gonna do.
Right. So that could include outside counsel, Eugene. So yes.
Right. Are you thinking an executive session or a public session?
Executive session. I think this will be legal advice, and if we're serious about this, we need to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
I think the question I'm going to pitch Eugene's way is what was in the ballot language and in the order in the ballot language and what was actually funded, to see if there was a difference between what they funded and what was in the ballot language.
Yeah, all that stuff. Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Just for council to know what my position is about Longmont and our residents, a city that I think is incredible and that I love, is that, and I don't know the area, but it is the east end of Manhattan that has been paying 100 years for a subway that they still don't have. I don't want to do that to our residents. We shouldn't be paying for something that is nothing more than the piggy bank for the Southern District to operate their rail. But what might be a good thing to look at is that part of Manhattan, and I'll get the correct wording for you, is suing. So it might be good to look at what they're using for their parameters to sue. I guess it's the MTA for. So just FYI.
If we can get enough people riled up, we could protest by having everybody go down with a Longmont ID and just say, I'm from Longmont, and start packing their trains. Just pack them until they listen. All right. But no violence. All right. So no violence. All right. And no electoral vote interference. All right. Harold, do you have anything?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Eugene, anything else other than thanks a lot?
No further comments, Mayor.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Ayes have it unanimously. Good night, guys. Talk to you later.